And we know that civic services is essential, and understanding that the person who takes on this role will have an important duty of directing our children's future. And we want to also make sure we're maintaining integrity and transparency of our interview process. We have 13 candidates in total. Today we'll be interviewing the remaining 6. We had 12, so we had 6 on January 5th, and we'll have 6 today that we'll be interviewing. We have 7 today? We have 7 because 1 came over from last week. Okay. So we had 5 and 7 makes 12. Just checking the math. Just want to make sure. Each interview is scheduled for 30 minutes with a 2-minute passing periods. All candidates will receive 5 questions. They receive the 5 questions ahead of time, so they are aware of that. Also, the questions are going to be also listed on the candidate table. The interviews will start tonight. As we said, this is a continuation from January 5th. And we're starting a little late, so thank you for being patient with us. And we'll be getting ready, and we'll call in our first Yes, sorry. She's going to be reaching the first the first candidate, but we have public comment, and we have 3, and we're going to be giving them 90 seconds.
We have 3 public comments, so I will read 3 speakers. It will be Ms. Cherie Ray, Mr. Mendoza, and John McKinney, please.
We're just being consistent. We had 90 seconds, and the last guy, I know that's a concern. We had 90 seconds. We're going to be efficient and making sure we're staying focused on tonight's agenda, is focusing on the candidates. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sherry Ray. I'm here to urge you to appoint Moni DeWitt to the vacancy on the school board, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak on her behalf. Moni and I go way back, friends and neighbors for more than 2 decades. My daughter babysat her sons. We picnicked weekly with neighborhood families at Alice Keck Park to listen to the fiddlers play and the children run around. It was only when both of us encountered challenges in the education system that we also bonded over finding solutions to some tough issues. Long-term relationships and institutional knowledge are a good thing, and there have been many standout board members who have served Santa Barbara memorably, and their work lives on. For time, I'm not going to list them all, but I would suggest that recent ones who I've worked with, such as Ed Herron on budget, Monique Lamone, who is working continually on the issue of dyslexia, even in the Senate today, and Kate Parker, who worked very carefully with me on a number of issues, literally saving children's lives. I believe that Moni has the quality and the experience to be added to that list if provided the opportunity. She educates herself, listens to the concerns of others, and adds her tremendous compassion, intelligence, and determination to make a difference. Her commitment to problem solving impressed me.
15 seconds.
Back in 2009, when the highly critical FCMAT report reported on troubled special education departments, she came up with many good solutions to and helping make structural changes. And I want to tell you one anecdote that I will never forget that says a lot about who Moni is. Her kindness and compassion the day after my mother died. She showed up my door with a bouquet of flowers, a mop, and a bucket to clean my floors so I didn't have to. I think she's a really good candidate.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You can submit your written comments if you want us to complete them.
Next speaker, Mr. Mendoza, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Eliquel Mendoza, and I'm a Chumash local descendant here from Santa Barbara and Santa Ynez. I'm also Jose Francisco Ortega, a descendant, 7th great grandfather who built a lot of the landmarks here in Santa Barbara, and I'm here to support Jacqueline Inda. I believe that Jacqueline Inda would help you leverage public and private partnerships and respectfully engage the community to represent policies for the board review within her appointed term. She holds the trust of this community, and she has a long history working through tough issues with a broad range of the population in this region. I am very personally interested in the school district addressing the areas of the foothills and the mission area, for these are pre-colonial, post-colonial significant
30
areas,
seconds.
significant areas to the Chumash people. Having an ally like Jacqueline Enda representing the Santa Barbara School District would be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. John McKinney, please.
I'm John McKinney, a 30-year resident of what we now call District 2. If all of the candidates made LinkedIn profiles detailing their qualifications for the job, Moni DeWitt's digital resume would stand out. Most apparent is her considerable expertise and experience. Her impactful volunteer efforts in the education field are many. Founding board member of the Dyslexia Project, participant in the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee, a member of the Literary Task Force. Moni's demonstrated she's a creative problem solver, consensus builder. She's a small business owner. Moni knows how to balance a budget and read a balance sheet and will ensure our education dollars are well spent. Moni DeWitt is linked into the educational needs of our students. Moni DeWitt is linked into our community, a longtime resident of District 2. Moni DeWitt is linked into exactly what this district needs
30 seconds.
and will be a stellar board member. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. So public comment is now closed, and I just want to reiterate, last week we did give 90 seconds, so we're just being consistent for efficiency, so thank you. So we now have our first candidate in the room, Stephen Jeremiah, is that correctly how you? Jeremiah, okay, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Jeremiah. We'll have 30 minutes, which can include any opening comments or concluding comments throughout the time. You received the 5 questions ahead of time, and also they're also there on the, should you need clarification, they're also on the table. And each of the board members will ask 1 question at a time. We have 3 in the room, so we'll share the questions among the 3 of us today. And as I said, you can add any opening or closing comments within that 30 minutes. So if you have any opening comments, or I can go.
Opening comments. My name is Stephen Jeremiah. I come from an immigrant family. We came over from Italy. I have been in the Santa Barbara area.
Oh, we're going to just hold on. We need to get your mic on.
I usually don't need one.
Yeah, we need it for the recording. Thank you.
But I've been in the Santa Barbara area for over 60 years. And for 23 seasons, I served as head coach at Santa Barbara High and various athletic teams. I was a head coach of the girls' soccer team. I was a head coach of the girls' tennis team and head coach of the boys' tennis team. It was a great experience for me, and I felt that I had, with that experience, I was able to bond together the various elements of our student body into one cohesive unit.
Okay, well, thank you. I have the first question. What is the role of the board?
Well, first of all, we got to set policy of which others are to follow. They also have to approve and look over and oversee the capital budgets and the capital projects. They've got to set budgets. They have to go over the local control funding and make sure that that is tight and bonded. We also have to form a bridge between the parents, the staff, and the students, and the teachers. I think that's very important to continue to build that bond. Doing once is not enough. It's a continual process.
Okay, thank you. And in between your questions, we'll be taking notes. We're looking down.
Not a problem.
Okay. Ms. Alvarez?
Yes, thank you for being here. Welcome. The second question has 2 parts. Number 1, how does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views, to inform board deliberations on important policies?
Well, first of all, if we're talking about controversial subjects, I assume, and to do that, we have to get out information early and often. I think we have to get a better website from which we can get and reach our parents, teachers, particularly our students that have access to that. And we also have to get a forum for the parents. What forum that would take, a social media forum, email forum, I'm not exactly sure which would be the best to reach them. But getting it to them early and trying to avoid conflict by resolving problems before they get to a critical nature like a lawsuit, which I'm very much against.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Suresh?
Okay, I'll be reading question number 3. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on this issue.
Well, first of all, you're not going to like this. I very much object to spending $39 million on a football stadium. That I was in the original meetings when they did the budget for this, and it was $6 million. And I remember the Dos Pueblos pool was budgeted at $3 million and came in at $6 million. So when they came in at $6 million for the football stadium, I figured maybe 12. Nowhere near what I anticipate $39 million. And I think the board definitely has to get a tighter oversight on those type of projects and make sure that never happens again. Because that other $33 million, I'm sure, could have been spent on the benefit of the students directly, not just the segment that play or practice in the football. And believe me, I was a soccer coach there for 8 years. I love the stadium and the school and everything about it, but that was wasteful. And also, some very well-meaning people were on that fundraising committee, and they never realized they were raising for $39 million. When they went out and asked for a donation, the one man said, "I can't ask anybody else to give more than I would." He was a wealthy man. Charles Schwab was one of them. And it was true. But that was based on $6 million. And it got out of control big time. And I know from my personal experience in redoing the tennis courts that the bidding process that they used was greatly flawed, because what they would do is get all the contractors in the same room and say, "Okay, boys, go over it and get back to me." Well, all these guys would come in and they'd fix the bids. I saw it happen. I'm saying that happened to get to the $39 million. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the process we used was flawed. I'd like to see that corrected. And, when we talk about the students are going to be included in a big way in a lot of the new funding that is coming out from the American Rescue Plan. And so it is important to get the feedback from the students, to get what they feel would be benefiting them when we're talking about spending these large amounts of money. I hope I didn't offend you too much about this football stadium.
Okay, thank you. I have question number 4. What will you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
Well, first of all, I would postpone the decision if I could. And whatever the subject was, I'm sure we could refer it back to staff to get the information we need. I know that Santa Barbara Unified School District has a very excellent and knowledgeable staff, and are certainly capable of bringing in information that would be needed. And by postponing it, maybe we could also put it out to other people that may give us more information that would be helpful. But I wouldn't make a decision based on inadequate information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Alvarez?
So the last question, what is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified? Is one component. The second one, the board members, what is your understanding of the board members' role related to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And then number 3, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal health, its good fiscal standing?
Well, I think this is one of the strong points of our present board. We have been very responsible physically with the budget. I noticed that last year we had a $7 million surplus, which went into our reserves, which really reflects good management. But we are going to talk about a funding. We have various sources of funding. The 59% or 157 million comes from the local control and funding. We have another from Fed funds, another 21 million, local funds 15 million, and other state funds 36 million. And I think that budget comes out to like 239 million. I'm not too sure, that's a guess. But when they do that and the board looks over those numbers, the major thing that the board has is judgment. In the past, minor exception this football stadium thing, the board has showed very good judgment in how they've budgeted their money. And they've come through with the students, being able to find out what they need. We have a student member here now on the board, so they can find out what do the students need for the classroom, what do they need recreationally. I know the subject came up a while ago of getting every student a laptop. I'm really much for that. Somewhere you can find money for that. I know that we have had in the past local donors. The Santa Barbara Educational Foundation in the past, that was formed when I was still coaching the tennis teams, which were encompassed mainly by members of the tennis team that founded it, Mr. Grant, Mr. Decker-Sadowski, Mr. Melton, and they were able to raise quite a bit of money for outside help for the classroom. And for that, the students need, I think they need a laptop. I also think they need an industrial arts department. We used to have one when I was first became associated with Santa Barbara High in 1986. We no longer have that. I think we should have it for students should hear from people at Marburg, tile setters, painters, and find out what good paying jobs there are in those fields. And I think that would give them a lot of incentive in which to go forth, get their English and math down so that they can qualify for these jobs, which is very important. Myself, I went to the University of California in Berkeley. I have an MBA from SC. I'm very knowledgeable about reading reports from the financial institutions that would be sending them to us. And I think I could be a great help, not only to myself, but to the school board, the parents, and the teachers, in explaining to those how that kind of money could be beneficial.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Am
Mr.
I
Chair.
gone? Or you got more? Do I get to say anything
Actually,
else?
that concludes the questions, but you do have time to make any closing comments you'd like.
Well, as I say, I think from coaching those teams and the soccer teams and the tennis teams, I really had a chance to see all segments of the student body. And I think that those teams became very well bonded. I think that I could help with the same thing, getting the students, the teachers, the parents, and the board to help bridge all those segments, to try and take a lot of the controversy out. I know that we are plagued by lawsuits, very unprofitable. The first lawsuit I was associated with came over the use of the bathrooms by the handicapped children, where they closed them at 3 o'clock and the people who were handicapped had no access to them. So very rightly, she took them to court. And not only did she win, but the judge greatly expanded the scope of the lawsuit to encompass not adding on several other workers to keep the restrooms open, but it came to about a $12 million capital project as well to redo it with elevators, etc. Probably a good thing in the past, but a lawsuit very seldom is profitable to either side because those elevators were now never open. I mean, I had one by the tennis courts. I never saw anybody in it. But I thought monies could all be used someplace else with negotiations between the students, and rather than being arbitrary, no, it's going to be my way. And I would very much appreciate being on the school board. I ran for the school board in 1992. I was rejected by the people. They took 3 and I was 4. But I had difficulty in that election. My mother was dying of cancer in Florida, and I was going back and forth all the time. I was not able to spend as much time on the campaign as I would have liked to. But I'm a little on the older side now. If named to the board, I would serve and run for one more term, and that would be about it for me. But I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate seeing you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jeremiah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to take a pause. We have some technical issues with our board member on the Zoom, so we'll take a pause. Thank you, Ms. DeWitt. We'll get started here. Thank you for your patience through that. Technology, I won't even say the thing. It works when it works, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. So anyway, if you've been here, and we know that we'll go over that, you have 30 minutes, which it also could include any opening or closing comments. No, is your mic on there?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Here we go.
Right. And so as you know, each of
Thank
the
you.
board members will ask you a question, and the questions are also listed there on the table.
Yes.
Do you have any opening comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I believe it was okay to mention your vision. And my vision actually for the district is really simple. It's to uplift all students. And I just want to tell you a little bit more about myself and kind of what my picture is for the district. And so for me personally, I think it's really important as a board member to be accessible, to be engaged, and to be responsive. And I will be fully committed to being prepared, as well as being present and open and collaborative at the board meetings and out in the community as I would be representing the board. I think you can tell a lot about somebody from what they do in their free time. And I do believe I have the will and the resources to add something unique and actually invaluable to the district at a time when I think you, although many people may not be aware, but at a time when you desperately need it due to learning loss. And I think I can offer insights. What I do in my free time that I think will be valuable lived experience is I was a co-founder creating a resource center. It's pro bono. It's here in town. I did that during COVID. And we see hundreds of students and families. We aren't therapists, and although I am qualified as a Linda Mood Bell and a reading tutor, what we do at the resource center is we empower students and families who come with individual needs, and that looks different for every person. But for some people, we were able to collaborate with philanthropic resources in the community. And last summer, which was very meaningful, even though it's one thing, we were able to help a sixth grader who read at a fourth grade level get a one-on-one intensive tutor in Linda Mood Bell, which happened to be the program that fit best for her. This was 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 8 weeks all summer. I was there present at my studio in the Resource Center, my photography studio. So anyway, that was meaningful, and that's the kind of thing we do. We also listen to people. We give them Kleenexes. We tell them it's going to be okay and where they can find resources as far as their reading struggles. Other things that appeal to me greatly is human rights. And I, through my photography, have been blessed to be able to work for Human Rights Watch, and then I became a volunteer for them. I do my photography for them as well. And also, hold on a sec, time out. I also work on their committee. And the big thing about Human Rights Watch is they do this one event, and that is their fundraiser for the year. But I also have great opportunity there. I was able to go to their LA one time. Everybody comes for a conference, and I was there, and I get to be educated on all kinds of human rights violations that extend to people like that have LGBTQ and all kinds of issues that you could possibly imagine, as well as juvenile justice. I get to talk face-to-face to brilliant researchers. And anyway, so that's another interest of mine. Also, I am dyslexic, and I'm also the mom of a dyslexic, and when he wasn't offered the services that I truly believe he needed, as many other students aren't, I was able to get myself up to speed by just connecting with people. People were very generous, and I learned a lot. And I'm happy to say I just drove my son to Humboldt this morning at 6 o'clock, and he is following his dream in zoology, and he's very happy there. So I think I've told you enough about me, but so I have the will and the resources. I also want to let you know I'm an empty nester, and that means I've got more time. And I'm also, I put myself through photography school. I'm a hard worker. I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves. I'm not afraid to do dirty work. I actually had a successful house cleaning business. I did gardening and painting. And I also have now I don't do that anymore, of course. For 20 years I've run a photography studio, and I work primarily with the nonprofits, and I also am blessed to know a lot of the leadership in the community who I've also met with in regards to a literacy issue, which of course is important to me as a dyslexic and also as a community member. So I think that would be the resources as far as time I think that it would take. And I can also tell you, I think the other resources that are required for a good board member is the habits and the attitude that you bring. And I would certainly say that I would bring curiosity. I would bring curiosity to every issue, and I would also bring a lot of humility, knowing that I don't know everything, and I am very comfortable reaching out to people. In fact, although I read fine now, thank you, Sister Clarice, but I do love learning through listening, although you mostly see me talking. So enough about me. My vision or my focus is on 4 areas, just very quickly, and then 2 priorities. So the 4 areas are equity, which I believe is a sacred trust. When parents drop their kids off, they are making a social contract that says that everybody, no matter how they come here, both their deficits and their strengths are going to be celebrated, and their areas of weakness are going to be uplifted, and that we can do that here because we know what's going on and we know how to take care of everyone. So that excites me, and I know actually that the board is really big on equity, so I think we have a lot of common ground there. Secondly, finance. If we are not financial stewards, it's like a house of cards and nothing happens, and it's just sad. And when we have 88%, this is the amount that goes to salaries and benefits, and so that leaves us with about 12%. So that means we've got to really be prudent, and I'm prepared to be prudent. I've also been on the LCAP advisory for 2 years, and learned a lot there. I think that is an area where the board can perhaps align the finances to the values, and I would like to see that particular document be a lot more transparent, in my professional opinion. Also, and it's $13.8 million, so we have a lot of ways that we can spend that effectively. Lastly, communication. I would like to see us be more generous to the public, and also maybe in some ways, although you've all been very welcoming to me, but I would like to see it, see the way we speak and talk to people, let them really realize that we value them. And, the other thing that you would know about me is I ran for office, but I spoke to so many people in our community, and a lot of them felt that coming to the board was that they may not be heard. And so community engagement is key, both for parents to have their kids be successful and for our fundraising and for support. So big deal on communication. And the last one, of course, is my favorite, literacy. And you've all heard me talk about that so much, so I will just give you a break on that. And I would say the 2 priorities that I have are, one, and this is actually very possible, and I'm really excited about it, there's a movement for this, is that we can have as a goal that every 3rd grader we can go for 95% proficiency in reading for all our third graders. It's actually a movement across the country. I've studied this, and I would love to share what I know and hear how you feel about that and see if we can implement that together with the governing body and the superintendent. The last priority of mine, and it also piggybacks sort of on the first one, but so we have people in the third grade not proficient, and the other area I want to look at is college readiness. And I just want to support you with data. I believe data is very powerful. And for college readiness, I don't know if people in our community are aware, but what you need to do is take some specific classes called the A through Gs, and these classes allow you just to apply to a university, and that creates a lot of opportunities and doors that are open. However, if you do not take the A through Gs, and many parents don't even realize that this needs to happen in high school, so there's a lot of reasons why there's a breakdown here. But if you don't take the A through Gs, you may graduate, but all those doors that all the kids who took the A through Gs, those doors are closed to you. The reason why I say it in that way is because inherent in that problem is equity, and I know you're all committed to equity. So the focus on the third grade proficiency, as well as the A through G's college readiness, I think if we really focus on those, because you can't do everything well, as I know very well myself. So I don't want to spread us too thin, but those would be things that I would like to bring to the board, and I think I have a lot of passion and data to support it. So thank you very much.
So now we're going to start the questions?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure. And you do it fine, so thank you for that.
I'll be faster in your
Oh,
questions.
no worries. Just wanted to make sure that we were in order here. So I have the first question. What is the role of the board?
Sorry. The role of the board. Love that question. The role of the board is actually to be leaders, which I think you all are, including you, Kavya. And I think the board creates the vision. Hold on, I got to track my other notes here. It creates the vision, the mission, and the strategy to implement that. The board also has 4 roles specifically. They are in charge of the budget. They can evaluate the curriculum, set the curriculum. They evaluate and hire the superintendent. And they also have an obligation for accountability. So basically what that means is if you as a board have a policy, you have to measure in some way that what you're doing is successful and making meaningful improvement. So that is essentially the role of the board, and they're obligated to give everyone a free and appropriate education, making meaningful progress. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Yes, thank you, and welcome, Ms. DeWitt. Number 2, I need my glasses. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents, community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Great question, and I think this is about communication. And I think there are several opportunities, but I think the most important thing would be a statement from the board as well as our superintendent, perhaps at the beginning of board meetings, to indicate, that they may not be able to respond one-to-one as people speak, but that the board and the superintendent recognize and feel that what the parents are saying is really important. And I think most people come to the board, they don't necessarily need people to agree, but I think it's very important for them to feel heard. So perhaps there would be a way even that you could sum up or at least let the people know if somebody's emotional in particular that somebody will circle back with them. So there's a little more reciprocity. I think if it's top-down or just one way, and I've learned this while I was campaigning and also while I was on LCAP and also when I was on the Literacy Council. In some of these areas, people felt that speaking was performative and that it wasn't really impact. Like, I could tell you about something, but that maybe you would already have made up your mind. So that's why I think the back and forth is really great. The other thing I would do to ensure is have, rather than just have this board meeting situation, I would have town hall meetings. And what I would do is take an area of focus, like let's say it's bullying or racism or literacy or finances, and get an expert to speak to that, like they do at Arts and Lectures, and somebody nationally recognized perhaps, or even speakers that come through here quite frequently. Like Stacey Abrams was here, she would have been a great speaker. And many of these people would be happy to do it for free. And so that would be a way to kind of educate the public, engage the public, and the public could then actually just, go up and ask their questions, and it wouldn't be as restricted. Because frankly, even here today, technicality, but people were on the paperwork, it said they could talk for 3 minutes, but then it got shortened, and it just sort of, I think we could be more generous in those ways, particularly when people come to speak to the board. Let's see what else I did. Oh, another thing that became clear to me, even though I think you do good outreach and try to get information, but there are groups of people in our community that are frankly just scared to even come to the board and to speak in that way. I've personally worked with, our community has undocumented parents, and their children are born here, and they have every right to a good education, but these parents are afraid of authority. They really don't want to come forward. And the same with some teachers, actually, because it's sometimes uncomfortable maybe to criticize your employer. And so what I'm thinking is that we would need, and also many people don't have computers, so my suggestion might be that at every campus we have like some kind of a lockbox. I do this at my studio. It's just a box, and you can have a combination and an opening. And anybody can drop a letter in about their topic, at each school site, and then we would ask if we could please have those comments scanned, and they'd go to the board. And we would naturally need to possibly adapt this if we're getting flooded with comments, but this would be a nice way to make it much more inclusive and also to address everyone in our community, because sometimes you just get the same people saying the same thing, and I think there are a lot of voices out there that we would benefit from hearing. And let me just double check that I didn't miss any other great idea. No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Ms. Suresh.
Okay, I'm going to be reading question number 3. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Really good question. And I do have something that came up for me. And let me just reference the item. So, going to the minutes of the board discussion that I believe was Tuesday, May 24th, actually. And I'm not sure, I can't quite read the stapler here. Anyway, it's item number 2. It's approval of the 2022-23 school plan for student achievement and educational services. Now, what's interesting about this plan is that it tells what every school in our district is doing in regards to literacy and other things. And I won't go through each school, but I did pick 2. And I actually did speak at this in May. And, one of the board, one of the schools here, Adams, it turns out, one of their key strategy and actions is to use a program by Fontes and Pinnell called Level Literacy Intervention Resources, and this was passed. Now, I won't pull up the sheet of paper, but you can simply Google on your phone. And what's kind of sad is that Fontes and Pinnell, they don't meet the baseline grade for even a reading program. Somehow it's published anyway. But so what's a concern to me is that these students at a very vulnerable age really need this evidence-based approach because, we've talked about this before, but the difference between the cueing system, which balanced literacy uses, and the science of reading, which focuses on decoding, is very, very different. And students who do not get to learn to decode or break up a word, which actually uses a different part of the brain, the ones who struggle typically don't succeed. 40% of our students will learn to read naturally, but reading actually isn't natural, speaking is, but 20% may be dyslexic, because 1 in 5 is, and the other 40% are struggling with reading because English isn't their primary language. Well, I've actually struggled with all those issues because I'm dyslexic, and also because English isn't my primary language. My family came here from Holland, and I was the firstborn in this country, and they were very insistent that we speak Dutch at home. And also, my parents didn't feel I didn't go to kindergarten or preschool, and so I went straight to first grade. And I can just say that I can empathize and understand what our emerging multilingual students are going through. And when you do the research, both the emerging multilingual students and those students with learning differences benefit from the same approach, which is learning decoding, and there's 5 things to it: decoding, vocabulary, phonics, phonemic awareness, and comprehension. And the cueing system, led by Lucy Calkins and Read New York Times, she's finally backpedaled on her own program, but it came from a place that believed that kids would learn to read automatically if they were just absorbed by beautiful books, and read a lot too. But it doesn't work because some of us, for neurological reasons, we don't, unless we're taught in an explicit way, we don't have as easy of a time recognizing the letter-sound correlation. However, if we use the science of reading or structured, it's a very explicit, sequential thing, and anybody can learn it. That's why we can go for 95% reading comprehension by the end of first grade. That's what people are going for. So I'm pretty excited about it. But then if I see this, and the other thing I would have changed, just to answer you, is that Cleveland, another school, they're using balanced literacy. Their 4th graders, reading proficiency, 19%. They don't need balanced literacy. So it's also, anyway, I think that encompasses the student needs, the evidence-based, and I also think even with state laws, we want to make sure people are making meaningful progress from year to year. And this actually is my all-time favorite handout because it visually explains everything. And this comes from an article from The Independent, which was in 2019, which talks about thank you Delaney for writing this, it says tensions flare over stagnant test scores. So that means there were a bunch of kids who weren't making meaningful progress. A lot of reasons for that. However, if you see, it's a subgroup. The subgroups are most vulnerable students, and this shows it clearly, pretty clearly what we got going on here. These are the students with learning differences. These are emerging multilingual students, foster youth, homeless, and this is Latinx. Right here we have Asians and whites, and also students with socioeconomic hardships. So that's this group right here. That's the group that LCAP could be helping, and this right here demonstrates that financial hardship or just finances is a factor, because we see that the socioeconomics, and we know that in our community, we have the second highest county of child poverty. So we can't ignore how equity plays into this, and we can see, which groups need help. And so that would be the reason that I would push hard for us to use evidence-based practices, because this group, if they don't get help and they're not proficient by the end of the third grade, they're 4 times as likely to drop out of school. But the good news is they're all teachable. We can get up to 95% by the end of the first grade. And this district, actually, I looked in the history, but I don't happen to have it with me, but our district had a history of people coming from Harvard and Stanford to study us as a model. So anyway, I think we could get back to that and focus on closing the achievement gap. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the next question, number 4. What would you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
If the decision was practical, like the fences at Washington, I would ask my team players, and if they all said go for it, I'd say fine. If it was about literacy or finances or anything about equity, I'd say I need more time, because that would just be my responsibility.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you, and I have the last question for you. And it's a 3-part question. So, what is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified School District? What is your understanding of the board members' role relating to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And then the last one, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal standing?
Okay, so I know I'm getting short on time here. We are a community-funded district. That means we get basic aid from the state, we get most of our money from taxes. We get like $143,000 from taxes, and we also get money for LCAP. That's $13.8 million, and our total budget this time is $229 million. It's about $10,000 per student. About budget health. Accountability is really important. We could do internal and external controls, proper management of reserves and cash flow, and we will keep 10% of our reserves. I could personally help by recommending a FICMAT report, which is a state audit. The cool thing about that is you'll find out all of the irregularities, and you can make course corrections at an early stage. And I think that is pretty much it. We can implement ongoing evaluation of spending and enhance funding through foundations and grants. And I also think if we become a model district, this community is beyond generous. Cottage Hospital had an unfunded mandate and for earthquake retrofit, and people, it actually got close to $1 billion, I believe, and now we have this beautiful hospital, and the community very much contributes. They have big hearts. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our questions, and you have about 3 minutes left to any closing comments you'd like to make.
I just want to say quickly, a friend that I met actually in LCAP, she wrote something about me, and she went to a lot of trouble to write it. So, and my other friend who thought she could read it couldn't. So, and beyond that, I just want to express a lot of gratitude and just let you know that I know nothing important really happens alone. Both for me in my life, getting through school, I had my husband, my friends. So that's important, and I appreciate Sunita Beale. Reading on her behalf, she's a doctor in the community. And she writes, I first became aware of Moni 2 years ago when I heard her advocate for a change in the way Santa Barbara Unified approaches how students are taught to read and how students struggle with dyslexia. This struck a chord with me because I didn't completely understand the complexity of the issue. We then both participated in LCAP Community Task Group and found common ground in advocacy for more vulnerable students in our district. Sorry. Moni, is very generous actually, has been a visionary as well as tireless in her efforts to create positive change for all students. As you're aware, many of her ideas she has promoted are being implemented in schools across the country. So very true. Teacher curriculum in California is about to fund the largest change to teaching literacy in years. Moni is well-informed, articulate, and a tireless advocate for well-researched programs that create positive change. I believe that this is the basis for an excellent board trustee, in my opinion, creating a laser focus on high literacy rates on all types of readers, especially in TK through 3, not only the purpose of a basic education, but also a great equalizer among students. A literate child can read and form her own opinions. They can learn about the experience of other people in the world, and they can choose the life they want to lead. Moni has already shown that she has a focus, and I believe she's an excellent choice. I also, since I have 54 seconds, I'm sure you didn't get to read this one part, which was kind of nice. I'll never forget her kindness and compassion. The day after my mother died, she showed up at my door with a bouquet of flowers, a mop, and a bucket. She insisted on scrubbing my floor for me so that I could get ready for the arrival of family members. Honestly, it never gleamed more brightly. She's being rather generous, but I just want you to know I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do whatever it takes to help 12,000 students. I think it's an honor and a trust, and I would be, take it very responsibly. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here, for your comments. Thank you.
Only 18 seconds.
You made it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have about 2 minutes that we'll transition between. I believe the next candidate is in the room, but we have a 2 minute to make sure we can work on a couple technical issues. Good evening, Mr. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your last name. You want to pronounce it, please?
Serafian.
Serafian. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Serafian, and welcome to the interview this evening. We'll have about 30 minutes for this interview, which could include an opening and closing comments. You have 5 questions that you've already received, as well as they are on the table. Each of the board members here in the room will ask you a question, and you're able to answer that. Would you like any opening comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would. First of all, thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to be here. Board members, administration, fellow citizens, members of the public. My name is Julian Serafian. Before I begin, I would love if all of us could, if you bear with me, close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. I know we've all had a heck of a week here, and deep breathing can slow things down just a little bit. So if you would.
We just want to keep moving, so.
Got it,
if you
never
could do that,
mind.
I
We'll skip
appreciate
the
it.
deep breaths.
Thank you.
The short version is I'm a child of immigrants. My father is Armenian descent, born in the slums of Paris. My mother is a war refugee from Vietnam. They met at San Francisco State University, and I came along in Sacramento not too long thereafter. I'm a product of public schools. I attended UC Berkeley for my undergrad before heading to law school at Harvard, coming back to California immediately, where I worked in big law in Silicon Valley for a couple of years before quitting during the pandemic to advocate for mental health's importance across social media and everywhere else that I could. I have only had the opportunities that I've had in life because of public school and the platform that it gave me. I want to pay that forward for the next generation of folks, students, citizens, Americans, in a system that, as much as we hope will be equitable for everybody, is certainly not the case for so many. I look forward to interviewing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have your first question. What is the role of the board?
At a high level, the role of the school board is one of policy and leadership. And this encompasses a lot of different factors. So I'll start with one. It's adopting a fiscally responsible budget. These are our tax dollars at work. It's critical that when the budget is shown to the board and comes before the board, that the board asks tough questions, that we look at our expenses and think, can we cut this down? When we take money from reserves, is it strategic, and how is that money going to be put back in reserves? All of these fall under the purview of the board's responsibility. On the school and the curriculum side, it's maintaining and adopting effective curriculum for our kids to learn, right? We're all here because we want our kids to have the best education possible, and we want to serve them the best education possible. And that happens through being thoughtful about what curriculum our students need. Are the teachers getting the effective curriculum? And are we adapting and innovating based on the needs of the population, which of course is changing. And I think, the pandemic accelerated a lot of these things regarding technology being integrated into the school district. And of course, emerging from that now, we have that learning gap that we have to tackle. So it's taking a look at our curriculum, and it's managing that. And at a very high level for education, It's working with citizens, students, teachers, and the administration in crafting a vision for our district. Where are we going? The school board are our fearless leaders and are our captains of our school district. The board sets and determines what groups of folks we are going to focus on most. What's going to take a back seat? Where are we putting our energy? Where are we putting our time and our resources? Without that vision, of course, it makes it harder to figure out on a day-to-day basis what the administration is going to do and what students are going to be serviced. Now, because we're community leaders, and I shouldn't say we, but you all are community leaders, the school board also has a responsibility to answer to its constituents. In each of your respective districts, you represent folks across Santa Barbara, and to that end, it's taking the interests of those folks and what they need and what they want and channeling that into policy. But it's also being our advocate at the local, state, and federal level, to the extent that there are opportunities for our district to grow, or for us to get some more money, or just to fight to get some more attention from the governor's office, whatever it is. We count on our board to do that for us. Now, at the granular level, the board also has the responsibility to hire and fire the superintendent. And this is not a micromanaging relationship, but of course, at a high level, the board cannot be doing the nitty-gritty and the execution side of all of the policies that they're approving. That is a job for the superintendent and for the staff and for the teachers and for the many people that make up our district, but of course, the leader of that entire operation is the superintendent. So holding their feet to the flames, right? Making sure we hold them accountable, making sure they're doing a good job, that we have the right person for the job. All of that is integral to the board's role in what I've previously discussed as a high-level leadership and policy position.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
I have number 2. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. So the key to any of it, making sure that we are hearing the right folks, is to listen right off the bat. And listening means, active listening, going out and making sure we're asking the right questions and we're platforming the right folks. It means absorbing what people are telling us. So that's going to underlie everything that I say here. But practically speaking, the first step has to be making sure that when there are opportunities for people to speak regarding a policy initiative or whatever it is we're discussing, that opportunity is made clear to the public and disseminated broadly. It doesn't matter if we allow people to speak if we don't make it clear to the public when those opportunities arise. Alongside that is making sure that we have the right people coming and advocating and talking. If we're talking about a policy that is affecting one specific interest group, one particular group of folks in our community, we need to make sure that we have the right leaders there, and we've talked to the right leaders and we've pulled them in so they can advocate for those people. Because it's not enough to get a misrepresentative group of people to talk. It's obviously much more strategic for the board and smarter policy if we're more mindful in thinking about who is actually coming to represent these people vis-a-vis the policies I'm talking about. Now, how we do that practically, there are a variety of ways. You can make time at board meetings. You could have an AMA, a special board meeting where folks can come in and talk about a specific policy and ask the board members any question they want. You could use social media and weaponize technology, and use the media itself to the school board's advantage to make sure that we're getting information from the right people and that people feel okay and comfortable speaking up. What I think would be excellent, and this is an initiative that I would take up, should I have the privilege of serving alongside you all, is organizing coffee with a board member so that folks can sign up and have a coffee date and talk about anything and be open, and make yourself available. I would hold office hours, once a month, perhaps twice a month, depending on the demand, where again, I'd make myself available. The key for me would be to be as approachable as possible, right? To staff, to teachers, but especially to our students. Our students are the ones at the core of everything that we're doing in this room and in our district. As somebody on the younger side, I've worked in social media myself, I continue to. I know how to get these folks' attention, and more importantly, I know how to keep it, which is not easy, I can tell you. It's not easy. So, to that end, I'd want to be approachable as possible, and I'd go to schools. I'd talk to students. Anything that I could do to make them feel comfortable, to make them know that I'm their leader and that I can advocate for them and that I will fight for them. Those would be the main priorities that I would look for.
Thank you, Ms. Suresh.
Okay, I'm going to be asking question number 3. So, identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, as well as your own personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the $2,500 stipend to teachers and staff that the board recently approved was excellent for a variety of reasons that I'll get into. First of all, I'll start at the state and federal level for those factors. When I think about the state and federal factors, what I think about are we compliant with state and federal law? That's my main concern. It's not the only concern at the state and federal level, but it's the primary one. And apart from being compliant, are there opportunities for us when we're crafting policy to think about where are added benefits and layers of benefits that we can get from the state and federal government? Are there incentive programs? Do we get unrestricted funds if we structure it this way or that way, right? To my knowledge, I do not think that this $2,500 stipend could have been engineered in a more advantageous way, and I think it was very much compliant with state and federal law. So to the extent that these factors apply to that decision, that's kind of where my analysis would end. Now, community concerns, student needs, and staff considerations. These I would all lump together for purposes of this policy because our teachers are our warriors here. They're the ones that have to guide these kids through learning values, through rendering judgment, teaching them all sorts of facts and rational thinking, reasoning. They had to weather a pandemic, and we all know that they're not getting paid enough. I have friends my age who wanted to be a teacher their whole life, and they went through all of the processes to become one. And they have quit being a teacher because, in their words, it's just not worth it given how much money the government is paying me. And they go and seek opportunities elsewhere in social media and digital marketing and technology. And so I think this stipend was excellent, not only because it provided a much-needed financial boon to these folks who need it, but it shows appreciation for our teachers. And without them, without their talent, without their leadership, our students will suffer. We need to do everything that we possibly can to retain our teachers and to treat them well. So on the personal value side, I think I've probably teased this out already, but I'm in full agreement with giving them this stipend, and I think it's just the beginning. In my world, teachers would be paid $150,000 minimum, but we're not in my world. And of course, in Santa Barbara, the need is even more dire because it's not a cheap place to live, and all of us here, I'm sure, are aware of that.
Okay, thank you. I'll be reading question number 4. What would you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
The first thing I would do, assuming that this decision is something that we're going to be acting on at a board meeting and I get the agenda for the board meeting and the board packet, I would email Dr. Maldonado, the superintendent, and I would kindly ask for more information to the extent I needed it. Hey, do we have anything more on this or that? The last thing that I would want to do is wait until the board meeting and then catch the administration off guard by asking for information then. That's just less efficient, and I wouldn't want to call them out when they may not be prepared or have the information. So getting the information in advance and, of course, email, call, text, however I can, and asking for it, that would be the number one. Number 2, pause the decision to the extent I don't feel comfortable making it because I don't have complete information. Making decisions based on incomplete information, I think, is a recipe for disaster in a lot of ways. And so if I can't receive the information or if I can't get it immediately, then I would consider delaying it. And lastly, I would get creative. I would go scour the internet myself for the answers I need. I would go and talk to every math teacher at all of our high schools if it's a calculus-based policy decision. I would go out there and talk to community leaders. I'll go knocking on doors. I'll weaponize social media and use that to source information in the community. Whatever it takes, to get the information that we need, and hopefully it won't be like a national treasure hunt, It'll be simpler than that, but in that order, that's how I would find it.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you. I have the last question, and it's a three-part question. What is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified School District? One component. Number two, what is your understanding of the board members' role related to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And number three, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal standing?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to start with the board member's role, if that's okay. And I alluded to this earlier, but when it comes to the budget, the board member's role has to be one of being a watchdog and looking very closely when the budget is presented to the board for approval at where is the money going? How can we innovate on the budget from last year to be more efficient, more slim, more effective? Asking the tough questions that people may get uncomfortable when we ask, but that need to be asked anyway, because these are taxpayer dollars at work. And the board is the gatekeeper of approving this budget, which of course we know is in the hundreds of millions every single year. And so as far as an individual board member's role, you're one of five, right? So you cannot unilaterally reject the budget, you can't edit it, but you can certainly ask the right questions, you can do your research, and you can push your fellow board members to do the same. Now, as for our district's funding structure, we're community funded rather than LCFF funded, and that's because we receive funds from property taxes and our collective revenue sources that are higher than the LCFF formula provided by California's state government. And it's one of many positive points. We have an excellent Moody's credit rating of AA+. We're consistently positively certified from an accounting perspective. We have no problem raising debt through the issuance of bonds for projects. And our reserve position is strong. All of these are great things. All of these are positives. All of these speak to the testament of excellent leadership that has gotten us to this point in this district. To maintain this standing as a board member, to begin with, the fact that we're community funded means we have to keep a very close eye on our property taxes. So what I would be focused on is looking at projections as often as we can and as accurately as we can to know, are we going to face a budget deficit or a shortfall, right? At what point will our district have to switch from being community funded to LCFF? Because if so, that has implications, obviously, both on the budget side and the bureaucratic regulatory side. There don't seem to be indications that the Santa Barbara housing and real estate market is due for a massive crash. I mean, the market hasn't gone down here in 40 plus years. But you never know. Inflation is high, technology companies are slowing down, and the way that districts find themselves in cataclysmic damage episodes is when the budget is drastically cut without adequate planning and preparation for it. And that's what happened to my high school district during the Great Recession. A fifth of the school was shut down. Class sizes went to 55 people. All of this because, of course, the Great Recession caught people off guard, including my district, and that was that. And so planning is incredibly important here. Looking at the projections is a key part of that. Beyond that, it's practicing healthy financial habits. It's not overspending to the extent we can. It's being mindful when we take on debt and not taking on debt that we don't need. It's looking at assets that are underutilized in our district or perhaps could be utilized better and using them accordingly, being efficient with what we have. I also think that it's smart and strategic for the district to scout for grants, look for opportunities to get unrestricted funds rather than restricted funds, promote revenue-generating operations that are not related strictly to government, like school foundations, right? Like parent-teacher associations, things of that nature. I know it's probably not a ton of money in the scheme of things, but it helps. Every dollar certainly helps. That would be that.
Thank you. That concludes our 5 questions. Any closing comments?
Yes. I may be new to Santa Barbara, but since I've gotten here, I have done everything that I can to serve the community and be part of our wonderful community. I joined Emily Zacharias' campaign for Goleta Area 3 School Board, and I helped her win. I went door knocking I printed her t-shirts, I came up with her slogan, I helped boost her social media. I did anything that I could to help. I recently joined the Santa Barbara City Citizens Oversight Commission to serve our local government in that capacity. I'm working with the local pickleball club to help us get lights installed at our courts, although right now the entire courts are flooded with mud, so that takes priority. And hopefully they'll be up soon. In a few weeks, I'll be sworn in as a volunteer for CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocate, where I'll advocate for a child as they navigate the foster system in one of the most traumatic periods of their life. My partner, Kat, sitting right here, and I intend on staying in Santa Barbara for the rest of our lives and raising a family here. This community reminds both of us of our homes where we are from in Northern California, except it has the beach, and we love the beach. If given the opportunity to serve on the board for District 2, I intend on running for re-election in 2024. And as a District 2 resident myself, I wouldn't need to move to do so. I'm here to help. I'm not here to rabble-rouse. I'm not here to cause conflict. I'm here to listen. I'm here to be a workhorse for whatever the community and for whatever the board needs. Because I run 2 virtual businesses, I have the flexibility to prioritize board work when it needs to be prioritized. If the board needs to go and meet with 10 officials in the span of 3 days, I will do it. If it needs legal expertise reviewing certain board policies, I can do that too. If it wants to re-up its social media and engage with the community that way, I will help there. And lastly, education is a pillar of society, and it's a pillar of democracy itself. It's the great equalizer that allows any kid from any background to go into our system and come out of it ready to achieve their dreams, armed with a background and reasoning and values and empathy that, of course, are built from a whole community of people rooting them on and leading them that way. I am who I am today because of our public education system in California. My parents, my mother, did not have seeing glasses until she was 18 years old. Both of my parents had to learn English and assimilate into America, and the public school system is what let them do that. I want to fight for people like them. I want to be their voice in today's era of government and politics. If I'm given the privilege of serving alongside you all, I promise you that I will give it everything that I've got. Because every child deserves a chance to succeed and achieve their dreams. And that begins with our public education system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sierfine, for your answers and your questions, actually answering our questions. And so that concludes the interview at this point. And again, candidates can stay in the room or they can step out, whatever you want to do in terms of that. But I believe our next candidate is in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Banning. Thank you for coming in. So we have about 30 minutes for this interview process, which could include closing and opening and closing comments throughout that.
Perfect.
We have 5 questions. They're also on the table there if you need to just clarification. We will be asking the questions one at a time, and we'll go from there. So do you have any opening comments?
I do. I want to start by saying thank you to the members of the board for the service that you're providing to the community. It takes dedication and service, and without people like you doing this, you don't have the school district. So thank you to all of you and to the staff that's here tonight as well. I began my career in public education actually in 1978. I have taught music and computer science and yearbook programs at elementary, junior high school, and high school levels. I was an assistant principal at an elementary school and a junior high school. I was a principal for 7 years at a middle school, and I was from a principal moved into a cabinet level office as a district director of human resources. I then advanced into an assistant superintendent of administrative services position, and in 2012 I was selected as the superintendent in the Goleta School District, where I served until my retirement in 2017. Since retiring, I have also continued to be active in the public education realm. I was the interim assistant superintendent for a year, 2 days a week at the Vista Del Mar School District when their enrollment was 23 students. I supported the Buellton School Board during the time of COVID with helping to monitor and implement their virtual meetings through Zoom. And when they translated or transitioned into hybrid meetings, I worked with their superintendent and tech department to help do that hybrid implementation. I was also a coach and mentor for the Santa Barbara County Education Office's CASC program. That's the Clear Administrative School Services program. I was a mentor for a woman who was a new principal at that time and served as her second-year mentor. And also, since retiring, I have remained active in the Santa Barbara's Channel City Camera Club, which is an 80-year-old club, started in 1939. We have 80 active members, and I'm currently serving as the president of that organization. Photography has been a lifelong hobby for me, and habit. The reason I'm here, why I've applied, is that I have, as I've said, dedicated my life to public education. It's been an important part of it, and I've been incredibly grateful for the opportunities it's provided me. As a student, I'm a product of public education, California universities, my family all products of public education, and I'm grateful for the career opportunities and the livelihood that came with it. I'm welcoming an opportunity to offer to give back to that profession that served me so well. And I'm fully aware of the fact that this is a provisional position and all the things that entails. I have no specific agendas, political agendas, other than supporting a strong governance team in a time of transition.
Thank you. I have the first question.
Okay.
What's the role of the board?
Well, that's a complex and simple question at the same time. The simple part of it, you can find the answer to that in your own board bylaws and policies at Board Bylaw 9000, which really does a great job of telling you what the role is. As a board, as a whole, you have to provide leadership and citizens' oversight of the operations of the school district. You have to ensure compliance with laws and public policies. You have to ensure district responsibilities to the values, beliefs, and priorities of the community. You have to hire and supervise and evaluate the district superintendent. And from my perspective, that includes providing the opportunities for growth and learning that the superintendent needs in the role. As a governance team working with the superintendent serves as the chief administrative office of the district, and the board supervising and working together governs the district by setting direction for the district that's focused on student learning and achievement through a process that involves the community, parents, guardian, and staff of the district. The board establishes an effective and efficient organizational structure for the district, develops, adopts, and upholds policies, as you did on Monday night with new policies about awards and such, adopting curriculum and instructional materials, and establishing budget priorities, adopting and monitoring and adjusting the budget as necessary. Also, a huge part of what you do is providing adequate facilities and keeping them up to date for the educational program. The board sets parameters for negotiations with the unions and ratifies the collective bargaining agreements. The board also establishes and adheres to standards of responsible governance, makes decisions and provide resources that supports the policies and priorities and goals of the district. And the board is responsible to be effective spokespersons for the district programs and efforts. You monitor and evaluate effectiveness of student achievement in programs and make changes as necessary. And you provide community leadership and advocacy on the behalf of students for the district's programs and public education in general. A personal note, this is not from your policy, but I want to say that I believe the role of the board includes keeping advocacy on the behalf of students and instruction at the core of what you do every day. The board has to have a unity of purpose and a clear shared vision to do that. I'm looking at it right behind me. It's there, and I know this board does that. The board has to maintain a commitment to equity and has to seek to understand and correct the causes of disparate student achievement. I'd like to offer, after review and looking through your materials and things, kudos to this board for having so clear a mission statement posted on your website, for having board superintendent protocols available for everyone to see on the front pages of the website, board governance handbooks. These are not typical kind of things. These are things that are evidence of effective board governance, and it's nice to see those things as a former superintendent. I'm also aware that you have a commitment to participating with the California School Boards Association to their annual meetings and opportunities for you to welcome professional growth. And congratulations and thank you for adding the student representative for the first time. I know, Kavya, you're not the first. Are you second now? One of the questions that we had to write a response to had to do about interacting and student interaction. It's very clear that engaging students in the process is helpful. Research shows that it's a very positive thing. So thank you for your role as well. I think that wraps it up pretty much.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you and welcome. Thank you for being here. Number 2, how does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Okay. First, the board has to have a philosophy of inclusion of parent and community and value the strength of consensus and problem solving that comes when you listen to all of the voices. That's the foundation to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. There has to be engagement and transparent communication with the full community. I would say that it's important to listen wherever you can, and to listen and to have dialogue and respectful communication. That's easier said than done in these days, but it's critical. Those are some of the broad things, but I would say to you that there are tangible things that you're doing that helps to have that communication. First of all, your meetings are broadcast. It's available right now. It's available as soon as it's done. People have the opportunity to see that whenever they want and see what's going on. You have done things with language interpretation, and I see ASL here. That's critical in getting all of the voices present. I'd also like to say that public comment is an incredibly important part of this. It's the only time that a member of the community can speak to the board as a whole, and it's the only time that the board can hear in the same time from the same voice of the public, all of you sitting together hearing that. Now, there are other opportunities that allow you to listen through representation or reporting and that type of things, which are just as valuable, but they're very limited opportunities to have people talk to you all at once and for all of you to hear exactly the same thing. There are advisory councils, and I know that you have those. There are the student board member. The representation you bring from your students is critical. I know that there are engagement opportunities for developing the LCAP and the strategic goals of the district. There are all kinds of opportunities, and in many of them there are board members representing the board. So with that in place, the next part of making sure that we're listening, and I want to review the question for just a second again. About informing the board when they're making decision. How can the board be informed? If only single board member representatives are hearing something, that's fine, but there have to be places for the board to discuss what they've heard with the other board members. And you do that with your board reports and with your opportunities to meet and during the board meetings with decisions to have discussion on particular items. And I presume that the representation that you have in those various committees is shared at that time. So an effective conduit of information for the board to bring the information that they hear, not in the whole setting. And obviously, the open session is an opportunity, if you're making decisions for board members, to discuss and deliberate after they've heard all of those things, and I hope that there are opportunities to discuss what's happened with that. I'm going to add a brief caveat to that, too, that all of this, particularly when we're talking about the difference between the board as a whole and single board representatives on committees, there needs to be a clear understanding from the community and from the board themselves about the clarity in regard to the difference of board members' individual roles as representatives, as members of the community, and versus the governance authority that resides only in the board as a single entity when all are together. So really, the board meetings are the critical place. All the gathering of information can happen in all kinds of ways, but unless it's all being discussed and brought to the table at the board meeting, you don't get what you're looking for. So, and one final wrap up on that question. There's another role that the board has. I think I've put this in the wrong spot in my notes of where it goes, but I wanted to bring up that one of the things that the board has is an opportunity to do what you're doing tonight, and that's in these rare occasions to select a member of the board as opposed to having them be elected. And I'm pleased to be part of that and to offer an opportunity for you to make that choice. But it's an honor to be part of that.
Great, thank you. Ms. Suresh?
Okay, I'll be reading question number 3.
Okay.
Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your own personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on that issue.
Okay, thank you. That's another tricky question because there's a lot going on, isn't there, to pick one. So I'm going to sneak in a little bit of the things that I'm impressed with that I've seen in board actions and decisions, and then I'll give you a very specific one. I'm very impressed with the board's attention to critical programs and operations. You've put time and resources into navigating the fluid and challenging environment of virtual learning and the transitions from virtual learning back into the classroom throughout the time period of COVID. What a challenge with board decisions and government regulations and all of that kind of thing. Kudos for the work that you've been doing on that. You've made forward-looking decisions regarding facilities modernization, both in funding and sustainable design practices with the district facilities. You've done a self-study involving emergent multilingual learner programs. You've spent time on ELD instructional materials and multiple tiered systems of support. You spent time on technology device use and created the Off and Away program. And you have approved recently financial support for CAS candidates, which I think is an important piece. That and other actions that attract and retain high quality and dedicated employees, including recent one-time off-schedule payments and substitute teacher incentives. But the specific item that I'd like to address in response to this question is your recent discussion and approval of a contract with UCSB evaluating the impact and implementation of universal access programs. I've chosen this because it shines a light on effective governance. This is a potentially controversial program with potential benefit for students. I know the program is in place and that you are looking to evaluate it. And so what that tells me is that through the discussion of meetings over the discussion and action over the last 2 meetings, it demonstrated appropriate discussion and responses that questions that arose prior to approval. Despite pressure to act quickly on this and approve the contract in December, you balanced the urgency of that with the importance and need to have more information, and the questions were answered and action was taken that led to a positive outcome, a savings and a demonstration, an outright demonstration of the value of the partnership with UCSB. There were bumps along the way in that, I think. However, they were all handled well and showed commitment to correcting and avoiding anything that might have been responsible for those in the future. This is the essence of good governance. It represented a willingness and a necessity of examining programs and decisions from a data-driven perspective, particularly a program that might have controversy or different opinions from the community, to be able to say, yes, and we've looked at it, and we've seen the data, and we've responded appropriately to what we learned from this valuable resources. Despite universal access's potential controversy, it is aligned with state and federal law, and it is responsive to staff and community consideration. As far as its personal value to me, among my greatest goals and values in instructional services is to adopt consistent and coherent curriculum and data-supported programs for all students in the best way to create equity in experience and equity in outcome across the district. And this program strives to do that. It is exactly the type of thing that I am most interested in seeing and supporting as a professional educator.
Thank you. I have the next question, number 4. What would you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
The first thing I'd want to know is why. Why don't I have that information? Was it because there was an emergency? Did something need to come up quickly where all the information isn't available? Was it an oversight? Was it something that seldom happens and just a mistake that somebody made? These things happen from time to time. In those cases, it's important to correct them and monitor them and find ways to make it better. On the other hand, another part of being prepared and having information is the individual responsibility of board members to review materials and understand what's coming at a board meeting. And if in the review of those materials there are questions that come up, in a timely manner to reach out to the superintendent and the administrative staff to get the answers and the information you might need before decisions are made at the board table. Now, I know there are going to be circumstances where this may happen for one reason or another. A board member just might have had an emergency themselves and may not have the time or may not have all of that, in which case there have to be some decisions made about clarifying that information and asking the questions at the meeting or considering a delay. And the delay may have to do with whether or not there is urgency or legal requirements or deadlines and you just can't delay. So there are possibilities that this could happen and a single board member might feel that I don't have all of the information, but there's a vote that I need to be participating in. In that case, I guess it depends on where that member sits in general, but I think that may be an opportunity or the right time to say I have to abstain because I don't have enough information. I would hope that wouldn't happen often, but I think that that's probably the ethical approach. The bottom line for me on that is that there needs to be personal commitment to prepare and communicate prior to meeting. That's the best starting place. It isn't always going to solve that if it's a problem, but that alone is the thing that an individual can do to prepare for that. Unique circumstances will certainly arise, and unique responses, and even then, attempts to improve moving forward and improving them are important.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Yes. I have the last question, and it's 3 components. Oh, I said 3 and I put 4, but it's really 3. I have an injured finger.
3 and an injury.
I can't really feel anything on this finger, so it's 3.
It's 3 components
yes,
of an injury.
3 components. What is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified School District? Is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And the second, what is your understanding of the board member's role related to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And the third component, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal standing?
Okay. So I'll start off with the understanding of the funding structure of the district. I know that the district is now a community-funded district. It has not always been. I guess it's kind of bounced in and out over the years. Community funding is that funding source for about 10% of the school districts in the state who receive more revenue through local property tax than the amount the state would give them through the normal funding formula of the local control funding formula. So when there is more property tax than there is revenue from the local control funding formula, the district becomes community funded and potentially has more income than the state would give them. Those districts are also referred to as basic aid districts. Although 10% of them exist in the county, about 50% of those kind of districts make up the districts of the Santa Barbara County. There are some significant differences between them. For one thing, just on Monday, the governor released his initial proposals for the budget in January. You have to read between the lines when you're a community-funded district to understand which of those things may be designed for local control, LCFF districts, that might mean that's money that you don't get as a basic aid district. There are some, for example, I think the COLA that is proposed is 8-point-some%, and I'm not sure that it's clear yet that COLA goes to, if it goes to the base funding of LCFF, that's something that you wouldn't see as a district. So it's really important to know that, and you need to acknowledge that you are one of the 10% of districts that have that challenge. Even basic aid or local or community-funded districts are different from one another. You can be a little bit over the limit of what the state provides, or you can be a lot over. And probably two examples of the extremes sit right next to each other right here in this county. Montecito, I would say, is the term they use is deep into basic aid. And I know that during my time as a superintendent here and after, there's always been the question of is Santa Barbara Unified there yet? Are they there permanently? And it's my understanding that things are pretty stable with being there, but I don't know that the district is particularly deep. And that's an important place to be around this question. So I've talked about publicly announced funds, the kind of things with the governor. We can't assume that what's announced to the public and reported in the news about budget is accurate and true for us as a community-funded district. There are also issues around what happens in times of financial distress. If the state is spending less money with schools, and your property taxes are staying the same, it can be really healthy. It can feel like we're okay. We're protected. We're protected because of the property taxes. On the other hand, when things go down in the state makes up the difference to those LCFF districts as soon as they can, unless they start to pay less. When property taxes go back down, there is no recovery unless they go down to the point that you're below the limit of the LCFF, and then you become no longer a basic aid district. So my understanding of the funding source of SBUSD is strong. I was part of three districts that were community funded. I was active in an organization called Schools for Sound Finance, which I'm sure you're aware of. I've been to their workshops, and actually one of my mentors prior to becoming a superintendent was the president of the Schools for Sound Finance at the time that I was her assistant superintendent. So the board's responsibility is critical. It's listed there in the role of the board. The oversight of this budget is one of the few things that you have real control over. You have to approve this budget. And so you have to, as a board member, understand the budget. You have to understand the various portions of the budget year, the first interim and second interim. You have to know what the multi-year budgets imply and what deficits apply. Are they planned deficits? Is there a history that the deficit is staying the same and not going away over time? Is the ending balance of the school district stable or growing? All of the things that would indicate the financial and fiscal health of the district. It's important for board members to understand and know that. And I know you do budget workshops, and I know that that's clear for you guys. And I would be happy to be part of that, and I think that particularly the knowledge around basic aid could be helpful and so forth. My contributions, I've already mentioned my experience with community-funded districts and School for Sound Finance. I'm knowledgeable and aware of both LCFF and community-funded budgets and funding. I'm well-versed in the state budget cycle. And in conjunction with the school district's fiscal services leadership, I would be able to help provide solid perspective and ask good questions on the district's budgets and multiple year forecasts. I also want to say that you're already well represented in this. Virginia Alvarez is knowledgeable about this and well aware and active with Schools for Sound Finance in a community-funded district. But boy, the more knowledge you have about this, the better it can be, because it can be complicated. That's it.
Thank you. So that concludes our 5 questions. Do you have any closing comments?
I do, just a few. I want you to know that during this process, I have chosen personally to limit my preparation and research and thought related to the provided questions. I have not listened to other candidates' interviews. I don't intend to later this evening, and nor have I otherwise made note of anyone who has applied. My answers in writing, what you've had, and orally this evening are entirely my own and based on my thoughts and my thinking of the role that I would play in the school board. I know that you have my written responses, and I just wanted to address your attention to a couple of things that are very important to me. First is, I think the critical challenge in public schools all over the world right now is addressing the learning loss that was created during COVID. It's an enormous challenge. And it's complicated by difficult frameworks and curricular designs that presume that students at every grade level have received what they were supposed to receive in previous years. If learning wasn't as effective during COVID, and I don't know where, if I haven't kept up with my math, and I have a teacher the next year that's starting with where I'm supposed to be because I'm in 5th grade and that's where I'm supposed to be, that's a huge challenge. Fortunately, it's a challenge we're all seeing. It's not just our district, but it's something that needs to be paid attention to. It's a great opportunity to address disparate responses and find out why student achievement is where it is. So that's really important to me. I think it's probably the #1 thing on the mind of school leaders everywhere. I also mentioned something that I believe is critically important for successful instructional programs. We know that data-driven instruction and results are important. Also important is for the school district to have consistent, coherent, research-based curricula and appropriately trained teachers and support staff to assure that that curriculum is implemented with fidelity and equitably with consistent delivery across the delivery of the content across the district. This is what makes schools and districts and learning successful. A vision of what is to be taught, what is to be learned, how it's going to be taught and learned, the data to back up whether it's happening, and the knowledge of knowing how to correct the areas that are there.
Sorry, it's
Am
time.
I out of time?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, because that's
He
where
said,
I was
is
going
that
to
somebody's
end.
phone?
That's where I was going to end.
So, yes, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks again for taking the time with this important decision. I'm here to give back to my career, and I know I'll make you make the right decision. I think I would be an ideal candidate for the circumstances that you have, and I wish you all the best tonight as you make that decision.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Can we just pause for the board? We can take a 2-minute transition between the next candidate. Okay, so we'll just pause for 2 minutes. Thank you, Ms. Cantrell, for being here this evening. We have about 30 minutes for this interview, which to include opening and closing comments if you so decide. Board members will ask here in the room questions one at a time. We have 5 questions, of which you've already been aware of, and also they're on the table there if you need further clarification. Would you like to start with any opening comments?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, then I will start with the first question. What is the role of the board?
Okay, the board is an elected, is it on? Okay, the board is an elected position, so there is the representation of the community, and the community isn't just students and parents, it's the entire community, and the board should be bringing to the district the concerns of the community, including teachers, students, and parents. The board also is a partner with the district, and the board members should provide guidance and partnership with the district.
Okay. Are you?
Yeah, and the board will also provide oversight, especially for finances.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
I have question number 2. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Okay, so I think our district does an exceptional job of communicating with parents and the community. As a parent, I receive on a regular basis Parent Square. We get emails, we get text from the district office, from our schools, from our teachers, and the board also provides opportunities with open board meetings, and that's an excellent opportunity for the community to come forward and present their opinions and their ideas in the open public comment sections of meetings. And I actually personally communicate with a board member just personally through email. So if I had concerns or comments, especially during the pandemic, with some of the things that I felt were important, just personal communication. You might run into somebody, Santa Barbara's a small town, you would run into somebody at a coffee shop. And even with, coming here to apply for this position, I've had many people give me their opinions. I said, hey, I put my name in. I would like to have the opportunity to be on the school board, and just that personal communication with people is a great way to get information and to convey information.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Suresh.
I'll be asking question number 3. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your own personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
Okay, so the issue that I thought about was at the high schools where the district has decided to combine honors English with college prep English. And that is an issue that impacts children of all levels. And we had this discussion at our family dinner table last night, and I have a 15-year-old at San Marcos High School, and he is a good student. He's not an exceptional student, but I would say he's a very strong student, and he is in honors classes. And his opinion was, Mom, this is too hard for the teachers, the students don't like it, it's just not a good idea. And we talked back and forth, and I asked him about his AP physics class. And one of the concerns I have is, with his AP physics class, I said, what is the demographic makeup of your AP physics class? And he said, well, if you take away the Caucasian kids and the Asian kids, we have Ashton and Nessa. And I said, who is Ashton. Well, he's a kid from India. I said, well, he falls under the Indian Asian population. And he said, we have Nessa. And I said, this proves the point that we need to have children of all levels in these advanced classes. I said, I find it really hard to believe that we have no Latin children in an AP Physics class. And I said, for this reason, I believe that the board made the right choice to combine Honors English and CP English for ninth graders, because I believe that there are children that get left behind. There are children who should possibly be identified when they're younger, that they have the capabilities to, and these are children who may come from less privileged social economic backgrounds, that they have the capabilities to be in AP Physics. And so I think that the board is really focused, their focus is correct, that we need to combine these children, combine these classes, and bring children, starting even at a younger grade. I think maybe even combining these classes in ninth grade may be too late. We need to start even younger and have these children granted the opportunity to challenge their educational skills.
Okay, thank you. I have question number 4. What would you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
Okay, the simple answer to that is that you continue to do your research. However, it probably depends on the situation. If you have a simple situation, it's a small problem, you may need to defer to, in the case of the school board, you may defer to staff and use and rely on their professional skills to guide you in your opinion. However, if it's something more complex, let's take, for example, when the school board was deciding whether or not the children should go back to school during the pandemic, or should we have the vaccine policy. At that point, you need to table your decision and gather more information, and that information might be gathered from scientists and the professionals on staff. But I think it's an education process. If you don't have the information, you need to simply educate yourself until you get enough information that you feel comfortable making the correct decision for the community, the schools, and the students.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Yes, I have the last question,
Okay.
number 5, and it's made up of 3 components. Number 1, what is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified School District?
Mm-hmm.
Number 1. Number 2, what is your understanding of the board member's role related to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And then number 3, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal standing?
Okay, so I am a certified public accountant. I work for the Goleta Water District as an accounting manager. So I have a really good understanding of, obviously, of accounting. I understand that, a school district is fund accounting, and as a board member with an expertise in finance, I think that once I delved into the financials, I have the ability, the technical and professional ability, to really understand how the financial statements come together and how they work. It is a unique skill to be able to understand financial statements and to understand the short-term and long-term consequences of financial decisions. And
Go ahead.
as a board, if I was selected to be a board member, I feel like that would be one of my greatest areas that I could contribute is to really understand what is going on at both the macro and really the micro level.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cantrell, that concludes our 5 questions.
Okay.
Do you have any closing comments?
I would just like to say that it would be a privilege and an honor to be selected. I know that there are a great number of candidates who have tremendous amount of experience, but I do believe that I have a lot that I can offer. I will be retiring this year from the Goleta Water Board, and I feel like this is really a good time in my life to give back to the community and to participate in the decision-making process of the school district. And I do believe that the school district, from my vantage point, as I said, I have a 15-year-old son at San Marcos, I really believe that the school board has done an excellent job during the time that I've had a son in the Santa Barbara Unified School District. We were in the Hope School District for elementary school, so we didn't have as much focus on the Santa Barbara Unified, but I believe the board and the district has done an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Following this, actually the board's going to take a 30-minute dinner break at this time, and then we'll come back and we'll have our final 2 candidates.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Back to order. Thank you for those during the break. So our next candidate is in the building, and she'll be coming in. Welcome, Miss India. Thank you for coming in. Miss Inda, right?
Inda.
I want to make sure I pronounce that correctly. Okay. So we'll have about 30 minutes for our interview together. You can have an open and closing comment during that time. Board members here in the room will be asking the questions, and it'll be the 5 questions. You've already had those ahead of time, as well as there's some there on the table should you need clarification.
Yeah.
Would you like to do an open statement before we start?
No, let's go ahead and start.
Okay. So I have the first question, number 1. What is the role of the board?
So, as a board member, your role and your responsibility is to policy and creating policy changes that will follow and reflect state guidelines and educational codes. We also have to partner with our administration because our trust in our administration leads to effective structure, and that structure comes from those policies. Giving full authority to our principals and all of their teams as teams and respected teams that make a difference in the children's lives that we want to impact on a daily basis. Along with that ethical standard, we also have the ability to work as one body. Our school board members cannot act as individuals. We have to make decisions as a full body, which means that we have the effective ability to go out and inform ourselves on community needs and come back and present them to the board so that we could effectively work through those in a public setting so that our administration could then take the lead and present us with what we need to in order to continue to be fully educated on different matters. Aside from those 2, we also have the responsibility to our community. We have a full body of different children, youth in our facilities that need us to continue to guide policies so that we could better look at our achievement gaps and help produce the type of changes that our community will be better impacted with. So I'll continue with those as we go on through the next questions, but it is our responsibility in those 2 models.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you and welcome. I'm going to ask question number 2. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Our school district has created forums in the past, has looked at these issues in many different aspects, from having board meetings in public settings to having board meetings in community centers. I've had dialogues dating back 20, 30 years when it comes to how do we engage our community. And of course, the opportunities for engagement give access to power. And so it is our opportunity to have these types of forums, have those discussions with community members in order to express diverse ranges. I believe that we have other ways to innovate that. We have other public-private partnerships with the radio stations in which we can host different types of forums and educational matters, get feedback, and really start to build partnerships so that people feel more heard. The other part that's important is that we have to recognize our history. We have to recognize the fact that maybe there hasn't been that type of dialogue in the past, or people feel that the communication between our board and our school administration and our families have been broken. So the power loss dynamic has been there for quite some time. In order to reestablish that, we have to create and give a space to be able to come back and engage in those ways. So let's go back to those community centers to hold these public meetings. Maybe I address different ways of meeting, whether it's on a Sunday or a Saturday. I know weekends are scary for some of us that have to work with our administrative teams. But if we start to look at our schools and we start to look at our policies, then we need to make sure that we continue to engage our community. And so with that, exploring other options for meeting times, providing childcare, providing other opportunities in which we could continue to engage so that we're better informed, that's important. The second part is how we deliberate our information. It's important for us in this particular question, or the way that I see it in this question, to also deliberate on how we can get all of that information and process as a team. Our board is one team, it's one body, and we have to lean on not only our resources and the leverage of the community, but we also have to lean on all of our other partners at a statewide level and our administration in their guidance. For that would give us the different ranges that we need to be able to really fully address the different issues that we have in front of us, including our budgetary issues.
Thank you. Ms. Suresh?
Hi, I'll be reading question number 3. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your personal value and beliefs to determine how to vote on the issue.
I used this opportunity to gauge one of the topics that I'm most interested in, or that I could address within 24 months of this short appointment, and that's gun violence. Our school board recently passed a resolution to further address gun violence within our schools. And we've addressed policies at a statewide level. One of the things that I've noticed is at a statewide level, what we have also done is created a safety task force or a commission at the statewide level that has to look at, evaluate, and monitor pilot programs within not only our schools but our communities. One of the things that I agreed with was creating that resolution, because resolutions create policy, and that policy then institutes change. What I felt like we needed to do a little bit better was the second part, which is leveraging now that policy and creating action within our schools so that at a very micro level, that macro decision could really be felt. Our community especially our kids, are 50% with us at our time in our schools, and 50% of their time is also spent in the community. And a hot topic button like gun violence triggers a lot of emotion, because in this case, we talk about gun rights. But if we change the conversation and we change the perspective, then we can have a better dialogue of safety. And that's really our importance when it comes to leveraging. We're not only talking about the hot topic issue, but we're changing the communication so that we could focus on our actual duty at hand, which is making sure that our children are safe on our campuses. Safety is important, not only because it drives learning in our schools, but because it makes a bigger impact to all of our family members and our people in our schools. I have to think about the time when we created these types of scenarios where we had to start to practice drills in classes. And I wonder how that impacts our parents, our teachers, and our facility members to really think about lockdowns and all of those things. Getting back to the message of gun violence and passing past the resolution into action, we could partner with Sheriff Bill Brown, who is sitting on our safety task force at a statewide level, to look at pilot programs throughout the state. They're implementing these pilot programs to be able to see what kind of federal programs are out there to lower gun violence within not only our schools but our community. So what a great opportunity to see something like a resolution implemented as a policy, and then partner with agencies at a statewide level to create the changes that we need to positively impact our community here. And of course, we have great partnerships with our cities, our local jurisdictions. Together, we can create a message and a campaign that would better impact that conversation and steer it away from, say, gun rights and focus more on educational values and keeping our kids feeling safe on our campuses. Thank you.
I'll be reading question number 4. What would you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
We have the power to slow processes down. And I think that one of the biggest tools that we could utilize is connecting with our administration and slowing our process down in dialogue within our board. If we have an item in front of us that needs more resource, more education, then taking the time in that agenda item to request that and bring it back. In this way, we also allow and ensure more public process. We lean on our schools district staff to get their resources, to reach out to diverse school districts so that we could identify different policies that maybe are used in other cities. I would actually connect with other state legislators. We have great state legislators that have come from the school board. I would build a relationship with the Santa Barbara County of Education because they have a lot of resources that we could also tap into, and sometimes we work in silos. More importantly, I would dive into parents and neighborhoods because a lot of our parents have the resources and the knowledge that we carry with us here in our schools, but it's not visceral to us because we're not on the ground. Opening up forums in community centers and trusted spaces would be just as important when it comes to especially issues that would better impact the lives of our kids. Of course, my strong suit is building partnerships. So private-public partnerships are important in any kind of macro, micro way so that we could really make the impact that we need for our kids. Yes, all of that takes a lot of time. That's very true. But I'm sure that we all know when it comes to any school issue, everything is valuable. And the amount of time that you guys take as school board members, that we take as school board members, isn't just sitting at a meeting. And it isn't just leaning on one specific way, but really exploring all of them. And that takes a lot of time and energy. The time and energy that I have to devote into this community and that I have for decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
I have the last question, number 5, and it's a component of 3 different things. Number 1, what is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified School District? Number 2, what is your understanding of the board members' role related to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And number 3, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal standing?
So in part 1, the Santa Barbara Unified School District has a budget of more than $220 million for all students in its elementary and secondary school programs. The district also reserves 10% of that annual budget. This is similar to running a small city and working with other close by cities. I know that this budget is quite a feat. In addition, a third revenue stream is those school bonds. The second part of that question, my role, it's important for board members to be knowledgeable of the budget, including all federal funds for special purposes such as special education. We hold annual board meetings when it comes to budget process, and sometimes that can be a lengthy process. But it is important for us to continue to use that opportunity to gauge the smaller resources that we have and really engage our community so that they're knowledgeable as to where we're spending that money, because accountability is important. The third part of that question, how would I contribute? My contribution comes with leveraging resources. Not only educating myself and using our team, our administration to go out and figure out what's out there, but also leverage our own community. We live in a community that's blessed. We have partnerships that we can continue to explore when it comes to being able to lower those achievement gaps. And that's important. As the founder of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I know what those leverages can actually provide within our schools, not only on a basic, maybe temporary basis or as a Band-Aid measure, but also in a more systemic way. And of course, when necessary, we could also explore other ways of creating more bond measures to support our schools and looking at those resources and leveraging them as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our 5 questions. So do you have any final comments?
Final comments. Well, I had a whole list of things, but what I really want to say is thank you for your time. I know that this has been a tedious process for everybody. I encourage all of our young folks in this community to continue to follow all of our board members and continue to participate as much as possible because it makes a difference. And I know that overall I have a certain long-standing history with working with our schools. I come from the schools. I was born and raised in the city. As a child that grew up with dyslexia within our school district, I understand viscerally what that's like. As a child that was raised in foster care, I can also see through that lens. As a mother with a high-achieving youth that went into CPA and accounting at the age of, 14 through our high school programs, I'm amazed at what the school district can do on a consistent basis for our kids. But there are different gamuts, and we have to be able to consistently be able to meet the needs for all of them. And as a body, I feel like we're able to do that in partnership with our community, in partnership with our kids. And more so with all of our administration who works diligently in making sure that we can explore all of the different options in front of us, not only locally, but regionally and statewide. So I thank you for the opportunity. I thank you guys all for your time, and I really appreciate this process.
Well, thank you for
Thank you
coming
so
in this
much.
evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So our next candidate in the building, she's in the building. Okay. So she'll be coming forth. We'll be now reached our final candidate of the evening. Thank you for coming in this evening. So this interview is about 30 minutes, and within that 30 minutes, you have time for opening and closing comments to your comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
Each of the board members will ask one of the 5 questions. The questions are also listed there on the table for any clarification that you may need. So, do you have any opening comments before we get into the questions?
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you. I was supposed to be here last week, but sickness took hold of our household, so I appreciate the accommodation. And I'm going to be wearing my mask, so if you can't hear me, feel free to tell me to repeat it.
Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. We're glad that we were able to accommodate you come in.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in. So I have the first question. What is the role of the board?
Awesome. Well, I guess can I do a small introduction? I guess I really
Yes,
did.
you
Okay.
can.
So, hello, board members and out there in YouTube. My name is Marcy Davis. I am currently work at UCSB with the veteran community. Particularly, it just happens to be in financial aid, but I help service members and their families, especially, gain access to higher ed and use benefits that are issued from federal and the state policies and procedures for different types of military benefits. I am a current parent to 2 students in the Santa Barbara Unified School District, one in 8th grade in junior high and one in 11th grade in high school. And we've been here in Santa Barbara for almost 11 years. We came here after my partner's military service and came to UCSB as students, him starting at Santa Barbara City and me going to UCSB directly. And since there, we've had opportunities to be engaged in the community, especially in our children's education, because of policies at UCSB, because of a supportive district policies, because of a supportive school system. Not perfect by any means, but greatly relied upon for daycare and after-school activities and being involved in PTA and things like that. So it's grown my interest over the years to be more and more, and giving me our family opportunities to be more involved in a community that has served us well. To take all that, what is the role of the board? So I see the role of a board, encompassing a lot of different things, ensuring public input and communicating outcomes. The board as an overseer, setting and revising policy, making major decisions about instructional programs, making needed financial decisions and reviewing the budget, making personnel decisions, discussing and voting on plans for the district. That's a lot, but that's how I see the board.
Appreciate that. Ms. Alvarez?
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
I have question number 2. How does an effective school board ensure opportunities for parents and community members to express their diverse range of views to inform board deliberations on important policy issues?
Well, I see it as having ample time to review policy decisions put forth to the board. One of the ways, right? If you've been looking through school boards, in my experience, the Goleta District and now at the Santa Barbara Unified, when agenda items come up, this is the first time an agenda item come up or the third time, and it has the board ensure that they are communicating and inciting public discourse and opinion. Have they made broad committees to come in? Have they searched out community partners that are doing the work that maybe the policy is affecting? Let's see. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, and my lens as a parent, I can't deny that, is the board communicating then the outcomes of that policy, or once they made a decision? Is there follow-up to that? Are they inciting the public to say, hey, how is this going when we made a decision? Let's see, I want to make sure, I'm glancing at my notes to make sure I hit all these points. I think sometimes there can be a tendency, and it's always great to try to avoid it being like a one-way communications where the board is getting information and then deciding without some kind of back and forth with eliciting public input. So giving the time and the space for that, the research for that, and garnering public input in those ways I think are important.
Okay. Ms. Suresh?
I'll be reading question number 3. Identify a recent board decision that you felt strongly about and describe how you would balance community concerns, student needs, state and federal law, staff considerations, and your own personal values and beliefs to determine how to vote on that issue.
Awesome. So, there's been a lot of board decisions that I would say the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board has faced a lot of enticing decisions in the last couple of years, especially because of COVID. I wanted to put on here. I could talk about the MOU that was recently signed with the Sheriff Department, bringing up issues about mental health and discipline. But I think one that kind of touches points on like what is a school board member, what did they do, is the district plans for combined honors courses with college prep, because I think it touches a lot of different points about equity, teaching processes, considering grade and evaluations of student achievement. And even though this is a junior high and high school decision, and for those who don't know, it was about, addressing the achievement gaps and providing opportunities for students who would not otherwise take honors course classes to have access to honors material and opportunity for honors credit. And so even though it was a junior high and high school policy, it brought up concerns about elementary school education, class sizes, student behaviors and accountability, retention of teachers, and training of teachers, which are all really important aspects that the board considers in guiding the school district. So my, strong point of view isn't so much in the policy itself, right? Because I think it was a great example because the board took its time on this. They elicited parent input. They elicited teacher input, principal input. there seemed to be ample research. I think, from what I remember, it first was brought up in around March, again considered in the summer, and then it was last brought up again in December, right? So that whole process of reevaluating, follow-up, I felt like was really important. I was really happy to see the board do that. I think some challenges and room for improvement are the communication of the policy. So my lens as a parent currently in this district, right, I think sometimes it's not issues of policy. I think sometimes it's issues of communicating that policy. I do this a lot in my job working with veterans. I have to take policy from federal government and the state and make that shareable and digestible for people to understand their benefits and how to, use it to pay for school or what they can and cannot do. And that can be a maze sometimes. And a lot of people, I would gather, I work on an advisory committee for the county, for the Veteran Advisory Committee, and I didn't even mention this. I'm part of a nonprofit, founding member for the Veterans Collaborative in the county, and a lot of that work is, you move from advocate to administrator, and interpreting policy and legislation, because a lot of the times, the people that make the legislation, especially in our state, who makes a lot of legislation, aren't the really people, the boots on the ground, that are the ones that have to carry it out. And sometimes it takes compliance issues and interpretation to figure out what works for the district and what doesn't, in my point of view. And I would say this question kind of highlights, what is your personal value and beliefs determine how to vote on an issue? So I think there's a difference between not having enough information and making a tough decision. So in this instance, I feel like the board had a lot of time to consider, a lot of input from the public, a lot of research was done. And so as a member, if you're still weighing the good and the bad, I think it's your time then to make a decision, find a consensus with your other board members to make a decision to move the district forward, instead of, maybe being too decisive and not coming to a compromise, or abstaining for any other reason other than conflict of interest. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. I'll be asking question number 4. What would you do if you believe you did not have accurate and complete information for making a decision?
Yeah, that's a good one. It kind of touched on that a little bit. So it's being prepared for the meetings and doing the homework, reviewing the agenda when they're sent out well in advance. Are there relevant resources to review? Are there partners in the district to ask questions to, such as, education services or business service for data? Has there been time to consider an issue, or is this the first time on the agenda? Is it appropriate to postpone a vote for more consideration, input from the public, more information, or more board discussion? All balancing, right? You don't want to damage the district by being ill-prepared and ill-informed. That may cause a district to miss a deadline. Let's see. I'm going to read that question again. Okay, yes. and then, of course, having public input, asking questions, seeking and listening, discussing the issue at board meetings, and then working to reach a consensus. I think that's really important, right? Because I think there are times, where can you compromise on? Is there something from one policy that can be, or issue that can be compromised with board members to move forward instead of stalling or instead of scrapping the whole idea? Is there chances to compromise for? And I think when you're looking for someone, an appointee in this case as a trustee, you're looking for someone that can work in the board, that understands these constrictions, that understands that there may never be enough information to make a decision, but finding consensus with your board members to move forward is the goal, right? To keep the district moving in the direction that you see fit.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarez?
I have the last question.
Okay.
And it has three components. Number one, what is your understanding of the funding structure of Santa Barbara Unified School District? Number two, what is your understanding of the board members' role related to the budget and fiscal health of the district? And number three, if selected, how will you contribute to make sure that the district continues its good fiscal standing?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think sometimes when you are, right, I also worked in Congress for a little bit as a district representative, and I think when you come from a place of advocacy to administration, there's that consideration for budgetary constraints that's not always considered. And for me, I have a lot of experience in this, especially when my youngest was towards the end of her elementary school time. I was part of the Goleta District District Advisory Council. And for those who don't know us, a parent rep from each school meets to hear district updates, provide input, and share information about school site. And this was during COVID, right? So budget was a big concern. And it really opened my eyes to what the budgetary constraints are for school districts, because as a parent, many years in that district, it was not you think about your school, you think about the PTA, but you don't think about the district sometimes as confining and budgetary constraints, right? So that was eye-opening. And from that time, I learned from the district about budgets, history of public funding in California, history of public school funding in California, local control funding formulas, community funded, what is community funded, what is the interim budget that you have to work with to make a final budget, and different measure bond funds. And so I would say from that time, and I would assume, because I wouldn't know, all the details as a member at large right now that I am, what all the budgetary constraints are at this SBUnified School District. But I do know that it's probably 80 to 90% already accounted for because of all these different constraints. And I would say if I were appointed to the board member on this board, I would learn more about the SBUnified budget and ask for information from the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services to make sure I understand the budgetary constraints of the board. I feel like that's a big role of this board that's maybe not always highlighted. And so having that background, I feel like, is really important. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So we conclude the 5 questions. Do you have any closing comments?
I just wanted to say that I'm grateful to have the opportunity. I talked myself out of applying several times. I'm a parent, and a lot of parent information is traveled by word of mouth from the board down, and I have that lens. I think it's important to have that lens, just as you have a student representative on the board, to have that lens on the board. Yeah, and I think, I have a voice, and I'm glad to be here and have the opportunity. So I'm glad to have it, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Glad that you're feeling better to get here tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, you too.
You too. So that concludes all the candidates. We had 12 candidates over the last week, I guess, this week and over 2 weeks. And I just want to express on behalf of the board, thanking all the candidates who came and put their application in. You could see how much preparation, how thoughtful preparation was going into the answers. And so really appreciate that in this very critical role that we're trying to fill here. And thank you from the community, bringing your answers, your thoughts. And we have some difficult decisions we need to make. You didn't make that easy because you came prepared, and thank you for your commitment, certainly to our children. So what I want to do is give us a little bit of time here before we start to look at the ranking, is that to give time for the board members to get their notes together and get some final things together. Mr. Escobedo, Ms. Moniz, I'll start with you when we start to the ranking, but we're just going to take a few minutes here to get your notes together, and so that we took notes during the time, but you just want to finish that up and kind of get getting your rankings where you want to go. So I'd give us like 5 minutes to kind of get your final notes together. Thanks. Mr. Escobedo and Ms. Munoz, you're turning your cameras on, I'm assuming. And unmute, please. Thank you. I'm assuming that your camera's on, meaning you're ready to give your rankings. Yes, thumbs up and let me know.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Superintendent Maldonado, you'll be tracking as the board members are giving their rankings. So we can start with Ms. Munoz, and can you give us your rankings of your, starting with your number 1?
Okay, and do I give the rankings for all the candidates?
Yes, start with whatever the candidate number.
Okay.
You got it's.
Sorry, it froze for a minute.
Yeah.
The top
It
4.
froze.
Your top 4.
Okay. Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sims-Moten. My top 4 would be Crystal Seeger, Jacqueline Inda, Mr. Gribble, and Miss Marcy Davis.
Do you need also the candidate number, Miss Superintendent?
And I have the numbers too, if you like. Sure.
Tells. I think we got your, Miss Munoz, we got you down, but going forward, we could give the candidate name and their number.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Mr. Escobedo, are we ready, Superintendent? Okay, yes. Thank you.
And President Sims-Moten, did you mean candidate number as it's written on the interview schedule in the order that they interviewed, or our number
Yes.
1, 2? Okay.
Yes, the order and your top 4 and the name.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So I have for my top pick, Moni DeWitt, candidate number 7. I have for my second pick, it's going to be Crystal Seacart Farmer, candidate number 1. My third candidate is going to be Bill Banning, candidate number 9. And my fourth candidate is going to be, where is it? Jim Gribble, candidate number 4.
Okay, you're good. Ms. Alvarez?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank all the candidates and acknowledge the time and effort that it takes in preparing. We had a very competitive interview pool, and I appreciate every single one of you for stepping forward. Thank you very much. My selection is number 1, candidate number 9, Bill Banning. My number 2 is candidate number 7, Moni DeWitt. Number 3, candidate number 8, Julian Serafin. Apologies. And my number 4 is Crystal Farmer, candidate number 1.
Turn that on. Yes, my number 1 candidate, number 9, Bill Banning. Candidate number 11, Jackie Inda. Candidate number 4, Jim Gribble. And candidate number 1, Crystal Seagard Farmer. Yes, number 9, Bill Banning is my first. Second choice, candidate number 11, Jackie Inda. Third choice, Jim Gribble. Number 4, I believe. And fourth candidate, candidate number 1, Crystal Seaguard Farmer.
So candidate number 1 has 4 votes, Crystal Farmer. Candidate number 4, James Gribble, has 3 votes. And candidate number 9, Bill Banning, has 3 votes. The rest of the candidates have either 1 or 2. The fourth candidate would be Jacqueline Enda with 2 votes.
So the number 1 candidate is with 4 votes. Is that Ms. Seaguard Farmer? Okay.
Do you want to hear the rankings by position, as in 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Yes, we can do that. Just one.
1 second. For your position rankings, for Ms. Crystal Seaguard Farmer, you had 1 for position 1, 1 in position 2, 2 in position 4. For Mr. Gribble, you had 2 in position 3 and 1 in position 4. And for Mr. Banny, you had 2 in position 1 and 1 in position 3. And for Ms. Inda, 2 in position 2.
Okay, so thank you for that. So in looking at these preliminary numbers that are here, it appears that Ms. Crystal Seaguard had got the most votes. Is that she got 4?
She had 4 votes total, 1 under each category, under each position.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. DeWitt.
You're deliberating, so I don't know if
Yeah, no, I just wondered. I didn't hear what you. Yeah, we give the top 4 candidates. Yes. So it appears, in looking at both, we looked at ranking position, and we actually looked at the total number of votes. Ms. Crystal Seaguard Farmer has the majority of actually all 4 votes. So she is our top candidate. So, board members Munoz and Escobedo, did you hear those results?
Yes, I did. But I'm interested in just a process question of we each had top candidates, and I didn't know if we were going to get an opportunity to advocate for our top candidates, or if we were just taking the number of votes that a candidate got in total.
Well, we are in deliberations after this first round of looking at this, so you certainly can deliberate and advocate if you feel you need to do that. But this is just a preliminary first round, so we all have the top picks, so we certainly can. So if you'd like to advocate for your top candidate, we can start there.
Okay. I did neglect to say thank you to all of the candidates for coming out and spending time with your application, coming out and interviewing. It's not an easy process. It's a public process, and you certainly have made our decision very difficult tonight. And I echo many of the sentiments that Trustee Alvarez shared. For my top pick, Ms. DeWitt, I was very impressed not only by the application we received, which was, I think, 8 or 9 pages and really in-depth answers to each of the questions, but Ms. DeWitt has demonstrated active participation in much of the school district's processes. She has been, for many years, showing up to school board meetings and making public comment, reaching out to board trustees. And in her presentation today, I really was taken aback by the level of research that was done in order to answer the questions, the level of thought that was put into the questions, but then also the perspective of the community member and how a community member does find coming to a meeting, providing public comment, intimidating at times, and providing the perspective of approaches that we can take to break down some of those barriers for folks, go and meet people where they're at, and really focusing on those who need our support the most. And sometimes they're not always the most likely to show up to meetings. And I was really impressed by both the application and the interview today.
Okay, thank you for that. Are you so are you just wanting to do follow-up comments with that, or are you hoping to re-look at a revote, or what are you proposing here?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can, of the pool of candidates that were voted on, come to a consensus on one, because I know that we each had ranked candidates for different reasons and different positions, and it makes sense for us to have a conversation and come to a consensus on one candidate of those that were voted on.
Okay. Ms. Munoz?
Yes, I'd like to stress the importance, I believe, of collaboration with the community. I think that both, I'm in with both Ms. Siegert and Ms. Inda. I see the collaboration with the community, the connection with the students who are most at risk, and the perspective of, like with Ms. Siegert, giving a lot of her own time volunteering in the community, not always, even when it's not been popular, and taking that risk, in terms of representing our students and the perspective of the students that, although there may be a few, they're very important to us in terms of racism and such. And with Miss Inda, I'm actually surprised that there aren't more votes for her because of her strong policy background, her participation in groups that are about, women, the voices of women, not only, not, how would I say, advancing the cause for women in our community, and also collaborating with many partners, such as the business members, with law enforcement, with foster kids. She has been just a huge advocate. I've had many times when I've been in touch with her about kids that are special needs or that are new to our community, just moved here, their medical needs met and such. And so I'm surprised that she does not have more votes. She has the micro and the macro perspective down. I appreciate all the candidates. There's been great suggestions in terms of our district with collaborating. And I certainly understand, the importance of literacy, diversity, and such. But I think that as a board member in this interim phase, that we really could benefit from someone who is a good collaborator and is there for our students and such, and has experience both as a parent and as an advocate.
Okay, Ms. Alvarez?
My lens is what I'm hoping that we will achieve is, I look at myself and my colleagues, and we all have obviously different strengths, different passions, which is good. What I look is something that will bring balance to our board, and that it's a little bit different than what we already have, and that has the commitment and the knowledge to help us move the district forward. And what I see from the candidates, what I see from that, also being that this is a 2-year position, it's short, and there's so much work before us. It would be very beneficial if we have someone who can hit the ground running. And what I saw from the candidates, they all brought many different, obviously different perspectives, different points of view, which is great. For me, what I see from the needs that I see, those needs would be fulfilled. Like I said, Mr. Banning has very strong background, very strong knowledge, and it's very well-rounded at understanding the board's role, the admin role, and a true advocate also for students, for curriculum. That was something that really I consider extremely important, plus his knowledge, obviously, of the fiscal side. And then, of course, Ms. DeWitt. Ms. DeWitt has, in my short time that I've known her, her advocacy, her passion for early literacy, which I share, to me, that's very valuable to our board. And to me, those are two very strong candidates that I would wholeheartedly support. And I will support our board decision that we make tonight and welcome with open arms our new board member. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Sorry, one more thought. If, depending on how we come to this consensus, we have one person who received 4 votes, different ranking from each board member. And then I think this is what you said, Dr. Maldonado and Mr. Vance, I'm trying to process here. So I wrote down, okay, who was number 1 choice? And we had a number 1 choice was Ms. DeWitt for one board member. Number 1 choice for another board member was Ms. Farmer. And number 1 choice for 2 board members was Mr. Banning. And so it all depends how we end up making the decision. Are we going to make the decision based on the person that got the most votes, or make the decision based on other criteria, such as how many candidates were chosen as number 1 by how many trustees?
Yeah, I'll start with that, because again, we're navigating through this and what that it ultimately means. It could mean through this deliberation that someone moves their choice to number 1 or number 2. In terms of that, the board members may move that, so that could come to a consensus in that way. So I really appreciate this deliberation, because it was not easy. Everyone came, at least the top 4 folks that got votes here, and even to the 5th got the level of votes. It's not from a lack of commitment, and it's not for a lack of the diversity, the commitment, the understanding, the knowledge that either one of them would bring to this, to our process and to our board. I was looking through it through a lens of how important it is to have a very strong board who understands its role. As many of you talked about, what is the role, the number 1 question, what is the role of the board? And sometimes that gets blurred, and you're not able to always do the work and move the work forward. So I was looking through that lens with regards to my number 1 choice, in terms of the knowledge that he would bring, the steadiness that we so need in terms of these times where we're going through, particularly in these next 2 years. I think that is a critical piece. And so therefore, if you could take everything from all 4 of them and make that one person, then we'd have the perfect candidate to fill this vacancy. But obviously that's not the case. So, but and then my second choice was Miss Enda. As Miss Minos talked about, the collaboration, the deep commitment into the community, bringing up being in this district, growing up in this district, in the various areas. She talked about being a foster child and having foster children and looking at that. So that was there, looking through that lens. What would that bring? The collaboration we need to do in terms of this, how important the community surrounds us and how strong we are, because we have such a strong and generous community. So looking at that piece. And Mr. Gribble just came, and it caught a different perspective. It was open. It's important about the tone that's coming. Can we move from the community, be a board member? Can we look at that? Can we make those moves to where we become one as a board, and we're not as one as an individual, but more, can we not blur those lines? And it's a difficult thing to do when you're coming in, you're an advocacy something. It's hard to kind of make that that transition. So I was just appreciating from Mr. Gribble, just saying, I care for kids. I'm coming from a teacher perspective. I'm coming from a parent perspective. So that's why, for me, the conversations were difficult. Miss Seagard, I thought about, the things that she was bringing as a young person, as a person of color who's, coming up through this district, the things that she has done in this community, things I think that she can do, but just in terms of, are we ready to make a transition from community advocacy to being a board? It is a difficult thing, and I wouldn't want to lose that very strength that is strengthening this community, have loud voices in the community, not necessarily at this level. So that was a thing that I was thinking about too as I was putting that, certainly the opportunity to do that. And Ms. DeWitt, you were right at my fifth choice there, just in terms of seeing you coming here and advocating, continuing about the literacy from the time I got on this board in 2016, 17, and seeing that, so no less committed on that. Just really trying to figure out what do we need to strengthen our board to be able to do the things we need to do, everything that you guys talked about, that all of you talked about, how important the things communicate better, how do we use the policy, all of those things, how are we going to do that? And so I thought about those things as well. And so taking all that into consideration, that's why I ultimately felt that all those things that I was looking for and that you're all bringing, I felt they kind of came in Mr. Banning tonight, being able to have the tone that he's coming, that he's bringing, the steadiness that we need. We know we've been through some unsteady times right now, and so we need to have that steady hand going forth, strengthening the board, strengthening the knowledge, and just his appreciation and purview, having been a superintendent, having been in this community and understanding that. So that's where I'm coming from with Mr. Banning. What I feel we need in the lens that I was looking through is strengthening this board in its role. Because oftentimes, if we don't have a firm understanding who we are as a board, it gets blurred from sometimes our perspective, but also from the community, because an expectation what the board can and cannot do. And so sometimes that sets up expectations, and then because there's an expectation that the board can just move things, and it's not. There's certain roles that we have to play. And so therefore, again, that's where I'm advocating or actually supporting Mr. Banning that I think can continue to bring this. This is 2 years. I think it's important as we're going in the next 2 years, we'll have that strength as this board, as someone who's bringing that steadiness and the calmness and the ability to navigate through, to understand navigating difficult times, having, again, his experience as a superintendent. And I was looking at tone. How we're going to navigate as a board, also being able to, he spoke about the way we were navigating a difficult conversation when we were navigating the contract with UCSB, that sometimes those things are happening, but you navigated it through, and we're able to do it as a board. That's what this board does. Because this board is strong, then the rest of this administration will be strong. We'll be able to do those things. Because the board is strong, that means everything will be in proper process of order to get things done. We're relying upon the superintendent to implement the direction and the policy and the vision. And that's where you see me advocating, and that's essentially where the lens I was looking through as he became my #1 candidate. Yes, Ms. Alvarez.
Yes, and I second what you said. I am also looking for stability, for balance. In the event that one of us is absent, that person can bring the knowledge that person has, that Mr. Banning has. It's valuable to this board. And one of the key components for me, and it's weird for me because I want to talk to Gabe and Rose in here. I'm talking to the screen. What I see also as one of the very, very high component for me is that he has a full understanding of the different roles, which gives him an edge as far as being able to join the board and start working with us right off the bat. Not spending time learning the other important roles that he would have to learn. So that, to me, that's very valuable. And that's why he is my number one choice at this point.
So Ms. Escobedo, Ms. Munoz, we can continue this deliberation until we get someone appointed tonight. So we'll talk what we need to do to make sure we're moving it forward. So I want to make sure that, again, we're back to you and your comments.
I think that the strength of having someone who is a parent is important to us as a board. Ms. Capps is a parent, and we don't have that perspective. Someone who's actually on the ground, working with the school schedule, this and that, and, going through the school system and so forth. And that's why I would advocate for someone, that is a parent, not to minimize, Mr. Banning's, impressive background and presentation. He made an excellent presentation. But I think that it's helpful for our district at this time of transition, to have someone who is a parent, who is dealing with these policies on a day-to-day basis, and who is, for example, working with, I know with Miss Inda, she works with kids at risk. She reaches out on a regular basis to our administration about kids at risk. And I think both Ms. Siegert and Ms. Inda have the perspective also about safety in our communities, the mental health for our students, gun violence, racism, bullying, and so forth. And so I think on a practical level, and in a way that we could improve as a district, and I think it's at a crucial time right now, is looking at in which way can we move as a district to ensure that our students are safe. I think that, to me, that's a big concern of mine. And I do have, I do participate in community group in terms of the guns that are out there, the violence and so forth. And then, of course, have the perspective as being on the board. So that's why I would really strongly advocate for a parent perspective in this position. And then also someone, two very well qualified women that would be able to jump in. Both have founded and are co-founders of organizations and such, and have that strong policy background.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Mr. Escobedo.
Thank you. I think the arguments that President Sims-Moten and Ms. Alvarez are making are good ones from Mr. Banning. He does have a wealth of knowledge. He would be able to hit the ground running, especially if it were only for the 2 years. But in my opinion, we have a good candidate that lives in district, and it would be able to run for re-election and be here for beyond the 2 years, and that would be Ms. DeWitt. I kind of want to hear a little bit more about, well, we have 2 in favor of Mr. Banning. I did make him my 3rd vote. I don't know that we're gonna have the votes to. I need a little bit of time, I think. If that's okay.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate that. It's worth taking the time when we're making an important decision tonight. And so we want to make sure we're giving it due course and time, because again, we're making a decision, even though it's a short-term decision, but in a sense, it's a long-term decision, right? So I appreciate you wanting to take some time to think it through a little bit. So does that give us time to take a short break? Give us time to take a short break, and we'll come back and continue the deliberations. I just want to add one more thing two things. On Mr. Banning, I looked at everybody too, not just coming and making presentations tonight, but I'm looking beyond tonight and seeing where we are tomorrow or whenever the next place is. So I was taking that into consideration as well. And then the second thing I was looking at, that we also continue to need strong community advocates. And I think anyone that's not necessarily the appointee tonight, it's still a very important role in this community to bring that to us as we're making the policy, making the change, as Ms. Inda, spoke about in her presentation. I think we still need strong, community advocates for the places that they come and continue to work with the board to look at changing our policies. I think with regards to parents, I think that gives us the opportunity to look at our parent engagement, our communication and outreach to other, that's already within our district that is on the ground working with the parents and working with the community. So as we're thinking about it too as well, that in these candidates, any one of the four, whether we're appointed here, I think the remaining three are crucial to continued support and strength of our community that also informs our policies. So we'll take or you need about 5 minutes, Mr. Escobedo, or do you need 10?
I'd like to suggest 10 minutes, please.
Okay, then we'll take 10. Okay, we'll be back in 10. Thank you. Mr. Escobedo, we were concluding with your needing some time to think it through, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think in going back and looking at my notes and looking through the applications for Ms. DeWitt, Ms. Seagart, and Mr. Banning, I can shift and support Bill Banning's application and candidacy.
Okay. Ms. Munoz?
And let's see, I wondered, Gabe, could I ask Gabe who his top four were? I wasn't sure.
Yeah. My number one was Miss DeWitt. My number two was Miss Seacart. Number three was Mr. Banning. And number four was Mr. Gribble, Jim Gribble.
Okay. Certainly, I think that, I would be also willing to consider, Mr. Banning as the choice for the board, if that is everyone else's, top choice for this 2-year position.
Ms. Alvarez, do you have any additional comments?
No, I'm actually ready to make a motion if that is appropriate.
I believe we've done the process of the first round, looking at this, having deliberations and talking amongst the board members in terms of us coming to a consensus. So thank you, board members, with regards to this deliberation for this very important position that we're appointing tonight. Appreciate the collaboration and being open to each other's opinions and thoughts with regards to this as we begin to, which is an important piece when we're having to make important decisions. So thank you. Ms. Alvarez, it says that it seems that we're ready to take a motion on this action.
Again, thank you to all the applicants for your time and interest on the board. Santa Barbara Unified is a strong educational entity because of the people behind it, the teachers, the student, the administration, and of course, we as board members, we work hard and help the best that we can. And with that, I would like to make a motion that we appoint Mr. Bill Banning to fill the vacant position for 2 years. And if he's here, I also move that we swear him in tonight.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second. We have been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 Yes. Thank you. It sounds like we have a candidate. talk a pause. We need a call to call Mr. Banning. And while you're going to do that, I just wanted to appreciate and echo Ms. Alvarez with regards to this process that we want to thank the candidates who submitted their applications. We also continue to look forward to working with you as well. The things that you brought forth, suggestions that you brought forth to this, so we can start to look at this as a board. They were great. I was taking copious notes along with you hearing that, so really appreciate, again, your commitment to all the applicants that came forward. There's a lot there that we can use, again, to strengthen this board and its role and strengthen this district, getting us ultimately to our mission of creating that world, and it takes all of us to do that. And I also want to really acknowledge and appreciate the integrity of this process, the board members in terms of doing the homework. As the candidates came and did their homework, the board's doing their homework, and so I want to appreciate the board members, the integrity of this process, therefore getting to a decision, a consensus decision through our discussion. So thank you. And we're just waiting on a pause to get a hold of Mr. Banning.
While we wait, I'd like to thank the district staff for all their work in this process. During winter break, when a lot of people were on vacation, they were working to make sure that this was prepared and ready to go as scheduled. So thank you to everyone who worked behind the scenes.
Mr. Escobedo or Ms. Munoz, have any final comments?
Yes, I would like to express my appreciation for the high caliber of candidates that applied to the position. It was truly impressive and it was not easy to try to make choices in terms of rankings and stuff. Each person, had something to offer and was willing to give to the community of their own time and perform that public service. So I really want, can't stress enough the appreciation that I feel, and certainly there are always roles for folks to fill with us and hopefully to continue to collaborate with us as a district. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Escobedo?
Yeah, I could not echo those statements more. Thank you to our staff. Thank you to everyone who applied. Thank you to my fellow board members for putting in the time to really dig in and try to get to know these candidates through their applications, their interviews. I just have so much gratitude for the number of people that want to give back to our community and invest in our students, our teachers, our staff. I learned a lot in this process, and even about folks that I've known for a while now, and I cannot express enough gratitude. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, board members. We're just waiting forward, and Superintendent just stepped out to call Mr. Banning. About 5 minutes? Okay, we'll take a quick 5-minute break.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board members. Thank you so much for this process. I want to congratulate Mr. Bill Banning and thank you for your stepping up to service. With that, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Bill Banning, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear the true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yes. Welcome, Mr. Banning. We'll do a high five on the Zoom. Thank you. Well, let me get to my agenda. So yeah.
We have a date to give them a retreat?
Yes, we do have a couple things. The 21st, you're already on that part. And Superintendent Maldonado will be getting with you in terms of dates that you can attend CSB workshops that are upcoming. So if we continue to be up to speed on that. Again, thank you for your commitment and ready to serve on this board. So So we have come to the end of our action. As you know, there's coming events that are coming. They are listed on the website, and also future agenda items. We are adjourning this meeting to the next regular board meeting on January 24th, 2023. We are now officially a full board, and we now adjourn.